Okay, everybody, we are live.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I think we have a quorum. I'd like to call this meeting to order, the Board of Education meeting for September 22nd, 2020. And let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a pretty long agenda tonight. We also have a back to school night tonight, so I'm going to try to get some of the items through the agenda pretty quickly and really focus our attention really on a discussion of school reopening. First thing is what I'd like to also mention is that in order for the public to actually submit comments, the link is open 10 minutes prior to the board meeting. So I know there's some of the public who have sent emails saying that they actually can access the link. That link is only available 10 minutes prior to the beginning of the board meeting. So I would wait until that 10 minutes prior in order to submit your public comments, at which point will be read after the approval of the minutes. Let's go to the minutes. Can we have a motion to approve the several minutes here that we need to actually approve this evening? Can we have a motion?
Move that the Western Board of Education approve the minutes from the July 22nd special meeting, July 24th executive session, July 27th regular meeting, August 10th special meeting, August 25th regular meeting, and September 21st executive session.
Any discussion, any questions, any comments on any one of those minutes? If not, all in favor?
Hi, Ruby.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Jan.
Hi, Victor.
Kathy?
Yep, already did all. Hi, Taffy.
Hi, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Minutes are submitted into the record. Meredith, we have some public comment to read.
We do, so just bear with me as I read these. The first is from Andrew Herbst, who MD from 5 White Birch Ridge. He says, in order to do any kind of distance learning, a child needs to have some sort of computer literacy and reading ability. The current system does not work for younger elementary students at all. If we want to keep the number of children in school at 50%, we need to switch ASAP to 2 3-hour sessions with reading, writing, math, and maybe some science taught in class to each cohort in person. There can be online sessions for specials and other subjects. This change should be implemented ASAP for Hurlbut. In addition, the precautions being taken are such that it is very unlikely for infected children to pass on the infection to each other while in school. As positive cases occur, we could hope that the contact tracing can be done in a more expedient manner than currently done. The second is from Christina Esselinger, 59 Ledgewood Drive, and they are being submitted on behalf of members of the Weston High School PTO Board. Question 1, Weston High School question, as it pertains to the possible decision of moving from early dismissal hybrid to full day hybrid, please clarify the specifics of what that means. Will full day hybrid include live instruction for students on off cohort days or remote? which is different from the current early dismissal hybrid on-off cohort days, which they have free assignment time, self-instructed. The idea of off cohort days being totally offline or self-instruction seems like steps backwards, which was the original hybrid 2 model. Live streaming appears to be working for other school districts that have similar size student body numbers as Weston. Question 2 is a BOE committee question. As the Weston High School BOE rep, I'm also trying to stay as informed as possible. As I cannot listen to all of the committee meetings, I rely on reading the minutes afterwards. However, on CABE, there are hardly any minutes posted for these committee meetings. When will minutes be posted for the meetings that have occurred since the summer months? I'm hoping going forward, these will also be posted. Question 3, is it possible for teachers to record lessons? We are hearing that students are burning out on screen time and losing focus, so they would like to be able to go back and rewatch if needed. Question 4, a PTO member has a friend who works in Easton Public Schools and has asked if there are contingency plans for teachers or staff to be able to switch to temporary virtual teaching should they have to quarantine or be tested due to either a family member having coronavirus or being contact traced to a person who has the virus. Question 5, in theory, kids who are identified as close contacts through contact tracing should be quarantined for at least 10 to 14 days. What is the current plans for these students? Are they able to move more quickly to the VDL category than waiting 5 days? Question 6, will the high school be surveying the students to see how they feel the model is working so far? This would include questions on VDL or hybrid in-person alternating and afternoon DL, depending on their participation. And question 7, the high school principal told a parent on Friday that there are only 2 custodians at the high school that can help with lunch. And this is one of the factors holding back moving to full hybrid day. If this is the case, is there funding to add additional custodians to help with lunch cleanup and disinfecting in order to get these students into full day learning or at least full day hybrid? That is the end of public comment.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. While we don't make it a point to answer the questions, hopefully during the course of the discussion on school reopening, many of these questions, if not all, will probably be touched on, and more information and answers will be given, I'm sure, as we discuss not only the current status in terms of the mode in which we're operating now, but our plans for the immediate future. Bill, we have some new business first to take care of in terms of retirements and resignations.
Yes, you have before you acceptance of the retirement of Elizabeth Fogarty, middle school art teacher. It's a fair, straightforward process. We just bring this to you as a advisory, and then there is a motion for you regarding this.
Can we have a motion, please?
Move that the Weston Board of Education accept the retirement of Elizabeth Fogarty, Weston Middle School art teacher.
You have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Melissa. All in favor?
Hi, Ruby.
Hi, Taffy.
I'm Melissa.
Hi,
Hi,
Gina.
Helen.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Victor.
Hillary?
Hi, Hillary.
Aye, Tony. All opposed? Motion passes. And we have a resignation as well. So,
Yes, again, it's a straightforward item. We bring these to your attention so you're aware of them, and then also you move to accept it. This is a resignation of Diane Shrezza from the high school case counselor.
you have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education accept the resignation of Diane Chorizo, Weston High School case counselor.
You have a second?
Second, Taffy.
Thanks, Kathy. All in favor?
Hi, Melissa. Hi, Ruby.
Hi,
Hi,
Hillary.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Victor.
Aye, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next item on the list, before we get to this, one of the things that was, we discussed as a board in the last meeting was whether we were going to meet in person or not. I think that we should probably continue our discussion before we close this evening, sort of at the end of the agenda, because there was some information that needed to be gathered in terms of the appropriateness of the technology right now to be able to do it in a way that's effective so that everyone could actually hear what's going on, and also some work needed to be done to assess the cost of cleaning if we were to have in-person board meetings. So let's wait until the end to have that discussion. I think Dan has an update on the technology, and I think Bill might have an update on what will be required in terms of cleaning. And then we can make a decision as to how we want to proceed in terms of future board meetings. Next item on the agenda is the fall 2020 reopening update, and I think that we're going to split this discussion up into two pieces. One is sort of a recap and a discussion of the events over the last week or last several days, and then secondly, sort of school by school, a status report on where we are and plans for kind of moving forward in terms of the mode in which we're operating right now. So Bill, maybe you can start with the recent events, sort of a recap and update and discussion on that.
Okay, so what we'll do is first off is to repeat, Tony, what we've just said, just to clarify, spend a little bit of time talking about the COVID-19 positive cases, the two of those that affected the district starting over the weekend, carrying in through today. I'll give sort of an overview. Certainly Lisa can speak to a few things from the high school. Laura can speak to a few things from Hurlbut. We will do all we can not to do anything regarding the privacy issues here, but I think there are some general fact patterns that will be helpful for the board to hear, and as well as some systems pieces. We have it, which I'll speak to in a little bit. Once we're done with this, then we'll shift into what was to have been the main focus of this agenda item, which is discussing where we are with our delivery model, our schooling approach, thinking on where we are on that, any potential changes moving forward. So we'll shift on that. I should note, it has been mentioned earlier, there's back to school nights. That's why this meeting is happening earlier than usual. Most of the principals have to disappear from this meeting to get to their back to school nights. So we have front loaded this item. It'll be a big item. We front loaded it. I do know that we've got Chief Henyon and Captain Bردacki in the queue because we are talking later tonight about the SRO program. I just would ask them to be patient because we need to get through this with the principals. In terms of the COVID-19 positive scenarios, I think as everyone board knows and those listening, we had 2 confirmed positive cases. The first was in the high school. The second was in Hurlbut. The high school one became known to us on Saturday. Positive test was returned to an individual. We were notified during the day of that. So late in the day, intensive work began with the systems we have in place to understand the situation, begin to consult with Laura Marks, Mark Cooper, Julie Giovanni is the COVID-19 liaison at the high school is on the point on that, working very closely with Lisa, working also with Matt, reaching out to me promptly, also working very actively with our nurse coordinator, who was then beginning to reach out to families, sort out extent of contact. As of that evening, we had quickly determined we had to think about this from an academic standpoint of contact. meaning within the school, extracurricular potential contact, as well as social or beyond school contact. In this particular scenario, all three of those categories were involved in trying to understand contact tracing. In some cases, it might be just one of those, but this was all three. So we had to work through that. We had quickly determined, or the team had, that as many as 21 individuals were potentially within that contact tracing group. So that led us Saturday evening to decide that first thing Sunday morning, we would be sending a notice out to the high school that would be shifting into temporary remote mode. As you're seeing across the state, many schools are having to go into a temporary remote mode to allow for ample contact tracing time and focus cleaning in areas known to potentially have been affected, if you will, by the COVID-19 positive. What's most significant in that move to temporary is the contact tracing. And again, let me emphasize those three categories. Let me also emphasize, as we've learned, the Westport Weston Health District will do most of the intensive work around the positive COVID-19 individuals or individual. A lot of the rest of the contact tracing is up to us as a district. And so that's where, while I understand the desire for efficiency, we have to be first and foremost effective. And we also learn things that in this process, which will update you a little bit, that's in the systems. So we were working on that 9 a.m. Sunday morning. A notice goes out from me to the high school, but also letting the whole district know about that COVID positive and the plans for the high school. 8:30 Sunday night, I get a call from Laura saying, we have a positive confirmed at Hurlbut. Quick work with Mark Cooper, Laura Marks, conference calls. Again, nurse coordinators in the mix actively on this, working with Laura. Kim Koos is the COVID-19 liaison at Hurlbut. All the systems we put in place, that team meets weekly. All the rest, that was immediately working very well to begin to determine what was the classroom, what was the potential range of contact. You begin to work on contact tracing. At 8:30 that night, it appeared that there was a connection between the high school case and the Hurlbut case. Based on that, and it was solid understanding of that, and we also brought the board chair into the loop just so he was informed. It was of great concern to Laura Marks as our medical advisor that if we potentially had a positive case linked from the high school to Hurlbut, and we had very definite reasons, I can't go into more detail for privacy reasons, we definitely knew it was connected, and we thought it was connected with various people. That said to us, we could potentially have significant spread through the entire district. So that's what led us to that night at 9:30, late, we apologize, but having that night send a notice that we were putting the entire district into remote learning. I'm not using the term closing because we did not close. We shifted the mode of our education delivery, which we had planned for. But it's important for you as a board to know that as of Sunday night, when we had the second confirmed case, already knowing some of the contact tracing that we potentially had a district-wide issue, that's why we went into the whole district going into the temporary remote mode. If it had just been at the high school, it would have been solely the high school going into temporary remote mode. If it had just been Hurlbut, it would have been just Hurlbut. And if we did not have the definite evidence of a link between the two, we would have left the middle school and WIS in hybrid for Monday, as it turns out Tuesday, and we would not have done district-wide. As we move forward in the fact patterns, we nailed down Monday for certain there was a direct tie between the high school case and the Hurlbut case. Fortunately, it was a direct tie, 1-to-1. I'm not going to say anything more than that. But as of Sunday night, we were afraid that there were other affected individuals in between. To just give you a handle on how quickly we figured things out, the concerns we had, but we still, rightly so, had a situation that both cases were linked. But it spread all the way, if you will, the connections, 12th grade, up, and our whole grade span was covered. So that's why we had to go as we did. The contact tracing on Monday, as Lisa can lay out some, that was the 21. Plus we had a social situation. We had the academic, we had the extracurricular, social. It took us time because that was outside of us, outside of the district, to understand that full range of contact. Similarly, for the Hurlbut, we had to determine, while there wasn't the social piece, we had to also understand within the school and for that family, any other things that might have affected what the range of this was. That led us then to stay in remote mode for Tuesday. As of today, announcements out that we're returning to our hybrid, in-person hybrid tomorrow. We clearly have a handle on the exact situation. As of Monday, I was able to inform families that if you had not been yet contacted, you need not worry. That was done again in consultation with Laura Marks and Mark Cooper, that we had done all that contact tracing we knew about. Today, the COVID-19 management team met, we debriefed. There are a couple things that we know from this situation. While we had planned well, and the systems went into place very quickly, very smoothly, in the sense of once we were informed, the COVID-19 liaison in that building, Julie, was right on it, reaching out to all the critical people, getting them moving, getting them working. Similarly at Hurlbut. One thing we learned though is we had not prepared scripts for the calls into families under the contact tracing. This is our first time at this. What we ran into is a bit of what Westport ran into, because they recently went through this, is clarifying, does the Westport Weston Health District do the contact tracing and outreach? Is that up to us? It's clear that much of that does reside with the district. There's Mark Cooper does a great job, but there's only so much staff. Plus we have a lot of those personal relationships. So one of our takeaways already fixed is that any of the individuals calling families as part of the contact tracing now have a script. So that it's very clear what they're saying to the family has more clarity, and next steps are clear. One thing we have been saying to families is we're calling you now and the Westport Weston Health District will call you later. That was actually a mistake. We now know not to say that in certain cases, but that has been fixed. That script is written. So that'll help us moving forward. So we are now understanding very well what happened in those 2 positive cases. We understand all of the contact tracing. We've been following up on that, and we are definitely able to come back into school in person tomorrow, Wednesday. I don't know, Lisa, if you want to add anything from the high school standpoint, and then Laura from the Hurlbut standpoint.
Sure. I would just like to take this opportunity first to thank our building liaison, Julie Gavoni, who really was of great help through this whole process, as was the other members of the administrative team and Cheryl Zilkeski. Just to kind of emphasize, people see that we're out 2 days and you think, a lot of the public's mind goes immediately to, oh, deep cleaning, deep cleaning. Cleaning's a part of it, but it also takes a significant amount of time to follow up and check on these things. And, as Dr. McCarthy said, this was our first time going through it. But to give you a sense of the number quantitatively of communications that had to take place, and clearly there were bumps in the wrong. The nurses' scripts were one of those bumps. But the 4 administrators, we made with the 24 students and 1 staff member, with us just alone, that was 72 different contacts, both calling and emailing. That was just for that group, let alone Mr. Berkowitz having to communicate to 7 coaches. That was about 15 communications. Our medical group, because we kept logs, we wanted to see, and we had sort of what I guess you would say is an autopsy today of what could we do better. the nurses made over 38 contacts. Again, individual contacts regarding the situation. Then we also had a glitch on Sunday where Power School went down for national maintenance between Bill's email and my email. So that necessitated us putting in our, what we normally use for a crisis, where we have our curriculum instructional leaders and some other key people contact staff, because we were concerned that staff might not see the emails. So, you know, we have 115 staff in the building that people had to farm out and call, make sure that they saw Bill's email, because they don't necessarily check their emails on Sunday. And then I'm communicating, sending out blasts to high school students saying, your parents can't get this email, please share it with them. And then we put things on, anything from Moms of Weston to Instagram to Twitter to the PTO. And so I'd like to thank all the people that really helped get the word out, because there's nothing worse than not being in the loop and not knowing or waiting, you know, because the email said, oh, there's one from following from the high school. So we learned that the best laid plans now to have, we have now downloaded every parent's email at the high school into a spreadsheet. So if heaven forbid Power School goes off again, with the touch of a button, Jody Saketa can do it. So it was a great learning curve. And, you know, and quite frankly, the public doesn't want to hear that. We have to get it right. We have to err on the side of we know what we're doing. And there were glitches. You know, a couple of dates were wrong, and we went back and meticulously checked, analyzing, you know, classroom seating charts, getting clarification on some of the seating charts, which was the front of the room, which was the back. I always am amazed how some small details can really throw things for a loop. And so we have to be very precise on getting all of those details correct. But we made it through, and everybody from what we know is healthy and safe, and instruction is continuing. And those are really the two most important things that we're striving for. Laura, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, before Laura comes on, let me stress, because it's really critical, particularly at the high school. We've put, I mean, the good news is we had in place the fundamental systems and the fundamental metrics. And this will be a conversation point for later. But in terms of determining close contact, who is potentially affected by a positive case, the CDC guidelines of 15 minutes and 6 feet is very, very significant. So we had, fortunately, as we should have, we did position all of our classroom seats at the high school 6 feet apart. And some might want to do, well, we'd have attempted to get them 6 feet apart. And then from that, track where the connections were or not, and to go back and look at that. But per CDC, per Mark Cooper, per Laura Marks, if we are within the 6 feet, that immediately broadens the numbers affected. But that was something we had to understand. Okay,
You know,
Laura?
Bill, one of the things that we should do at the next task force meeting, if you don't already have that, you know, on the agenda, is going to be sort of a postmortem on this, where we need, you know, what went well and where we need to tighten up on process and procedures for the next time this happens. I think this is going to be kind of front and center for the next task force meeting. Lisa?
I'm sorry, there's one thing I forgot to say, and I know it came up in one of the questions. We have been really working hard to not lose any instructional time for students that have to transition, whether it be they have to transition because of quarantine or whatnot. So all of those students, we took care of it. Dan DeVito was great. It's been done. I think there was a concern that it was going to take days to transition, and that's not the case. We're very cognizant of the fact that we've got to make this work quickly, because, you know, the students that didn't sign up for VDL that have to, because of circumstances, go to it, we can't let them lose any time. And all the teachers know that, and the office hours are posted, and they should be able to access their learning.
Laura, did you want to add anything from Hurlbut?
Sure, just a few things. Bill and Lisa gave a very comprehensive summary, I think, of what we did. Very similar at Hurlbut. The case at the high school was obviously made aware earlier than ours, so we are still doing some follow-up communications. As Lisa said, we knew this was going to happen at some point. We had procedures and protocols in place, but the first time you do it, we do find some areas that is just a learning curve for us. So our teachers immediately, we got the information very late Sunday, and Monday morning we were teaching remotely. Everybody flipped over. We had some great successes with that. We also had some areas that we learned, okay, everybody flipping over to remotely almost instantly, some technological glitches that we had to work through, but for the most part, fairly smooth. It is a little harder for our youngest students. That has been a conversation that has been ongoing. The youngest learners are not as technologically proficient, but we are excited to, reopen in person tomorrow for students who will be returning. And as Lisa said, we have worked very hard at Hurlbut as well to not lose any instructional time with our students throughout. But I think that, between Lisa and Bill, there isn't much more to say. So unless there's questions.
I have a question. Without prying, was the second case identified through contact tracing from the first case, or was it identified completely independent of knowing that there was a link?
It was identified completely independent, but we were able to make that connection quite fast.
Okay, because
actually the independent connecting to us, there's a vital handshake here between us and the community. All of this started outside of the schools, and then we had to deal with it. It was behaviors well away from us that came into us. The Hurlbut one, it was helpful when we were informed that right away that particular family, I can't go into any more detail, but they did help us begin to understand a connection. So we were able to do some fast work, but it was not through contact tracing. It was through independently coming to us.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that question just so that parents and families know that just because they did not receive a phone call through the contact tracing process, that obviously, alarms should still be going off if they, see something or sense something, or, not essentially to wait for the contact tracing link to say anything.
Oh yeah, well, in this case, it was a confirmed positive. The family, for different reasons, had gone to have members of their family tested, came back positive, and they immediately informed the nurse at Hurlbut and also informed Laura and Kim. So, that was a family, for whatever reason, they said we need to go get tested. They did, and that's how we came upon that one.
And Bill, I think you hit on something important about the fact that this particular issue was caused by choices made by people outside of the school. Not in a shaming way, not in a way that's going to release any public information identifying the family. But at some point, there has to be a conversation again about the expectations of the members of our community, whether it's staff, students, other family members of our students, so that we don't have staff and students impacted by irresponsible and ignorant decisions. And at some point, that conversation has to be had.
Gina, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that when we look, like you said, without naming names, I think this fact pattern kind of really illustrates what I call the trifecta of not adhering to our public policies around COVID. From not quarantining when you're supposed to in that period of time going to classes and socializing, to having gatherings with high school students unmasked, to not being completely open when asked questions with people doing the tracing. I mean, if this goes on, we'll be shutting down schools, every week. I mean, this is, you can't emphasize how important the community involvement and community responsibility and parent responsibility is in making sure that we keep everyone safe and the schools open. This was a very, very disturbing set of facts. And while it was inevitable, this was something that was clearly unexpected in terms of how we would expect to be in a situation where we had not one COVID case, we had a COVID case, we had tens, if not more, students that need to be quarantined, and we had a spillover into the lower schools. So it's, I don't know what you do to emphasize the importance for the entire community to have to be extremely diligent around the public health protocols. You think it's not going to happen until it happens, and boy, there was a lot of thoughtless behavior here in this last week.
I mean, going forward on this, I think, Tony, Gina, what you're saying, we as an administration and the staff join us in feeling the same exact strength of point of view that you're sharing. Lisa Wolak at the high school is expressing very clearly to our oldest students the importance of being responsible, because this is an example where a few steps, this is such a contagious situation we're dealing with, that a few steps force us to then put the whole district into temporary remote, put a lot of families and students through very difficult, uncomfortable situations, create a lot of doubt, a lot of worry, and that's not necessary. I have to add the following. As we've been working with families on the quarantine, we've hit resistance. I have to say it. As we've been working with families on the quarantine, we have hit resistance. None of us created COVID-19. None of us want it. All of us are figuring out how to operate here. But we've learned, looking nationally and internationally, that there are some powerful tools. You mask up, you stand apart. That's my new phrase. All these notes coming up: mask up, stand apart. You can still have all kinds of connections, but mask up, stand apart. And if you're asked to quarantine, honor it. Honor it. And don't fight it, because it is then we lose so much. And you can hear the passion in my voice on behalf of what we're working on here. And so we'll keep working on it to message, remind, and I know the leadership of the town feels the same way. So we'll do all we can to remind people. Lastly, we understand how difficult it is to do even these simple things, but we've got to commit to it.
I have a question about contact. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Ruby,
go ahead,
one quick
Ruby.
second.
Oh,
Tony,
okay.
Ruby, can I go? This is about Bill's, directly
Sure,
about
sure,
Bill's
sure.
comment.
Sure,
Sorry.
sure.
I just wanted to say, with respect to the quarantine, I mean, I think there was a lot of disappointment by students at the high school that it was strictly because of the location of their seat in the classroom. And even you just said our desks are supposed to be 6 feet apart. And most of those 21 kids that are academic contacts, it's just poor damn luck that their seats are too close. And that's just really unfortunate that, again, irresponsible and ignorant behavior is causing this type of impact on the education system. I mean, it is beyond. And I respectfully request that we try to look again at the placement of the seats in the classrooms to make sure we can meet that 6-foot criteria whenever possible.
That's a good point, Gina. And just practically speaking, these are 30 minutes now that we could have spent talking about how we're going to move forward and reopen schools, ease things. And unfortunately, just from a practical perspective, it just throws a little cold water on that conversation. I think we have to talk about that. I think we have to move forward. But these events do set us back a bit. That's just the practical nature of what happens when you have to go to remote learning because of events like this. And and it just, like I said, it's everyone needs to be much more careful and mindful. And that's the only way we're going to keep, first of all, the schools open, and second of all, move forward the conversation about getting our students back in sooner versus later.
I have a quick question about contact tracing, because I think that the story was, when we were including Mark Cooper and Dr. Marks over the summer, the story was as soon as we had a positive case, contact tracing would be turned over to the health department. Now that we've had positive cases, we are now realizing that a lot of that contact tracing is falling upon the district. So I worry a bit when it comes to the lower schools and contact tracing, especially Hurlbut, only because, a first grader can barely remember what he or she had for breakfast, let alone who they came in contact with, who were they speaking to, what activities they participated in. So I'm wondering, without sending the entire school into a frenzy and running to test their child, is there any way that we can isolate it to, without naming names, to a grade level? Because at the end of the day, this is now a worldwide public health issue, and it could easily be transmitted very easily. And I wonder about, I question the contact tracing when just questioning, a first grader or a kindergartner, and how definitive we can get.
Well, in terms of the contact tracing, it's coordinated and managed very much by Mark Cooper. And there's, the extent that's required, though, when you have the numbers, is then our nursing staff and the administrators have to pick up a lot of that. Laura can speak a bit to how that actually plays out. The contact tracing isn't necessarily focused on that student as much as working with who's in a particular room, and what goes on in an elementary room in terms of decision making as to who's potentially affected is very different than for the older students. And part of that is you're in a room for about 4 or 5 hours, which is very different than if you're moving it out. And Gene, I very much hear your points about the positioning of chairs and all. I just would urge us to remember that 6-foot issue as we get into later discussions. Because if we have tighter rooms, you can do the multiplication of how many would have been affected in this situation. But Laura, do you want to reflect a little bit, protecting privacy, on actually how with the younger students we did handle the contact tracing? Because Ruby's points are well taken.
Yeah, so Bill's correct. The contact tracing is done through the adults. I mean, at the primary level, we know where the students are. We know where they're sitting. They're not, moving throughout the school independently. That's, what was one of the big reasons for the cohort model and the hybrid model, was the limited number of students in the classroom and defined spaces. We don't have shared spaces here. So, if, a student's desk is a student's desk. At the at the middle and high school, that's different, but at the elementary levels, it's very, I don't know that control is the right word, but it's very defined. This is your desk, this is your space, and they really don't move around. They're not moving classes, they're not going into the cafeteria. And it's part of the reason, we designed school the way we did this year, because we know exactly where they are.
Is the entire class, so hypothetically, if there's a positive case within a classroom, is the entire classroom notified?
Yes. So if there's a positive case in the classroom, that classroom is in direct contact with a positive case.
Okay, so then the parents are notified, and then the parents can get a test for their child. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and in the elementary rooms, this is occurring elsewhere, not just in Weston. Elementary room, again, that 15 minutes, the 6 feet, we need to sort through that. But in an elementary room, that whole room is then considered exposed, and also then the quarantine. But we also track staff movements and behavior. If staff are not in for that whole time, in and out, we can manage that because that's important. Staff have been concerned about that, but we track that very carefully. Then families are spoken with, and then for the, then they carry it forward from there.
Can I add something? At the high school level, what basically we relied on were seating charts on adults also. We didn't necessarily rely on the students because, I was in my call, somebody said, my child said that person wasn't there that day, that the person was absent. And I took a note, okay. And then I called the teacher and I said, are you sure that the kid was in the room? Are you positive? There are students there that don't remember seeing this kid. And she said, I know the person was in the room. The person walked in a couple of minutes late. I remember it. And I agree with you, Ruby. Kids forget, or they don't know, or they don't see if somebody arrives a couple of minutes late. So it's best to really look at other things like going to the adults and really clarifying. And the good thing is everybody wants to help. The one thing I do want to say though about the 6 feet, just to make sure, is this, so it's 6 feet and the desks are 6 feet. They're not less. But the CDC guidelines talk about 6 feet or less, but they also talk about the length of time. And we clarified this with Mark Cooper. So you have to be very careful. If it's greater than 15 minutes, which in this case, it was 40 minutes, that is why we looked at the radius of exposure, 6 feet, and the 40 minutes together to determine, erring on the side of caution, who needed to quarantine. So I think that's an important piece. If we went 7, 8, 9 feet, we would not be able to fit certain classes, even in their cohorts, in their classroom, because we have different sizes at the high school. The rooms are different sizes, and we had to literally move teachers if they had a cohort that was larger to get that 6 feet.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that too, at Hurlbut, we, and as a district, we committed to the 6 feet because it reduces the exposure risk. And we've committed to that. So when we get questions about why can't everybody come back into school full time, we would not be able to maintain the 6 feet in the current, the way we have it now. If we added teachers, if we added classes and we spread everybody out, I mean, we've talked about this over the months. The 6 feet helps reduce possible transmission.
Lisa, that's I think that's why I think scripting in the initial communication is really important, because maybe some people were led to believe that maybe the desks aren't 6 feet, and so I think maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but I think that one thing that's important in that communication is that initially there's a real there's a script that everyone adheres to, so they don't go off script and potentially say things that are not 100% accurate.
I have a question for Bill. So when this happens again, what is that going to look like?
Well, I mean, every case is different, but we do have some sense of what would be similar. If it's a single positive case in any one of the buildings and we have no evidence of any other cases in the rest of the district, only that one building would potentially go into temporary remote mode. What we debriefed on today with the COVID-19 management team at 2 o'clock was, would we even have to close a building? I think it's likely, given the extent of contact tracing that has to go on, just even from our part in coordinating with Mark Cooper, coordinating with Noah Marks, because we want to be safe. We want to maximize the opportunity for health and safety. It's likely, and this has been the case across the state, most districts, at least the building goes into a temporary mode for 1 day. And it's to really allow, yes, there's the cleaning piece, but the big piece is sorting out where there may be contacts. You can inform families. If we could do it without going into temporary remote mode, we would. I don't want to raise false hopes or expectations. Because even if we had the things that could have gone better here, even doing those better, that's not going to shorten the time on the contact tracing piece. But what would be different is we would not have the whole district go into remote mode. We'd try and isolate that to any one building. What would be similar is the carry out of this, and this is what other places are going through, is that some number of students within a larger school are affected. They're put into quarantine. We've seen it in Wilton. We've seen it, there are 2 cases in New Canaan now. We've seen it in Westport. So there's an initial whole building, but then there are other students who are quarantining and others aren't. Some of that is simply bad luck that they're near someone. So what would be the same is our COVID-19 liaisons are very clear on their roles and responsibilities. We're very clear on the interactions with Mark Cooper, Cheryl Sikowski, very clear on our work with Laura Marks. They're very accessible to us. We'd be clear on communication coming from the superintendent general with a specific one following up from the principal. And we would try and shorten that temporary remote time down as much as possible and keep it as focused on one building as much as possible.
Yeah. My observation, Hillary, is that the lower schools are probably easier to isolate and react to. I think the nature of the high school students, basically through academic contacts, sports contact, and or social contact, I think the nature of it is just more complicated to nail down, takes a little bit more time. That was my observation. And I think the high school team did an incredible job on getting their hands around this quickly.
Yeah. I did have one question, if I may. First of all, I want to commend everybody for, doing this operationally. It's no small task. But I do want to come back to one of the questions. I think in the initial part of the meeting, I guess no teachers were quarantined as a result of this incident, correct? And if they would have been, what would have been the plan, the instructional plan for that classroom?
We do have staff quarantine.
Yeah.
We have staff quarantine. We have an instructional plan too. And I don't know if we want to speak to that. If we have that quarantine, we either would remote that teacher in with a sub-teacher in the room. We're allowed to do that per the state. And also we've set it up, and we have set it up for our staff. If you're quarantining either because of your own exposure or a family member, but you need to stay home because you've got a child quarantining, we've set it up here so that if you're healthy, you're still able to work, and we can Zoom you in as the teacher of record, and you've got then someone in the room. So we're prepared for that and ready to operationalize that as necessary. I mean, Lisa, Laura can speak to that. I want to be cautious because getting in too much starts to divulge private information, but staff, part of this, were quarantined, and we are prepared to make sure there's not any gap in the instruction. Now, if we have a lot of teachers who start to get quarantined, that's one reason why Trumbull had to go into remote for a significant amount of time, because there were a number of teachers who were within 6 feet eating lunch, and that resulted in them not having enough subs to run the district for a couple days.
Yeah, so I can just add to that. If, we are able to have staff quarantine and immediately flip over to remote teaching, which is what I was speaking to a little bit earlier. Within 12 hours, we did everything we could to make sure we did not lose instructional time, and I think we were successful at that.
If there's no more question on this, Bill, maybe we can go into kind of a school by school discussion of kind of where we are and next steps on reopening?
Sure. I'm just pulling up some notes here on my screen. I'll be brief in setting a framework for this. Central office, Ken, Dan, Tracy, Phil have been actively in conversation with the 4 principals, assistant principals. We've had some input and update last week with the WTA on some general ideas in each building, their teachers involved. We're in the process of talking about where we are now with the hybrid early dismissal. What's the potential to shift to hybrid full day? Either way, what are things that we need to do to improve? We're 9-10 days into this. We were in voluntary remote learning yesterday, today, so we did not lose those days. Those are instructional days. But we also got a lot of data in the last several days about what suddenly could happen. What are physical arrangements and scheduling within a building matter for when we hit COVID-19 positives? What does that mean in terms of potential numbers of students affected, staff, all the rest? Also, are we ready to shift from one to the other? So I had Friday, no idea what was about to hit us on the weekend. I had Friday, based on a lot of discussions we've been having, sent out a 2-page statement to the whole community, to you as a board. Very importantly, and I can't do a screen share here, but it's in your record, your materials as a board. I raised 4 areas of consideration that we look at as to how we're doing. The lead one is the Department of Public Health, Department of Ed metrics on COVID-19. Those are posted weekly on a very comprehensive portal. But how we're doing at the county level, we're advised not to drill more detailed than that, but how are we doing at the county level, that's a week by week. Second is how are we doing at our mitigating strategies? The state is due to give us a checklist on that. Several of us as superintendents have created a draft checklist. The COVID-19 management team has looked at that checklist. It basically takes the 5 general mitigating strategies and becomes a checklist that we can use going through the buildings, classrooms to see how we're doing relative to those, because how we're doing on our mitigating strategies tied up to the health indicators may suggest what should be our scenario for schooling. Third, we look at academic growth. Right now, that's qualitative, observational. Fourth, we look at social emotional learning. Again, that's observational and qualitative. As the board knows, you have a very experienced group of administrators and a very experienced group of teachers who are quite adept, especially early on in a year, at looking at qualitative and observational feedback as to how are we doing academically, how are we doing in the social emotional. So those are things that we're toggling amongst and between as we try and determine how are we doing within any of the schooling scenarios and at what point we may be ready to begin shifting. Very important in the memo that went out, in my summary wording, I flagged 3 areas that whether we're in the early dismissal or whether we're in the full hybrid, we're doing well. Let's embrace DBT and we can do better. So I've listened to the team. There are 3 areas here. One is, can we get that real-time interaction between our students and teachers? Can we get that stronger, more frequent, more active? And that's connecting that in-person and remote. Second and related is, can we tighten the coupling, my phrasing, can we tighten the coupling for the blue and gold cohort, the coupling that when that blue cohort is in and then they're at home remote, can we tighten that down? So as I think some of you expressed, can you get 5 days of curriculum and not have that second day be a rehash or repeat? And that's not necessarily happening, but I think we can do more to get towards 5 days of curriculum by trying to tighten that coupling. So blue, when you're in the classroom in person, that's setting up the home day. So it's not just a repeat, but it's really connecting well. Now, I'd urge us to be patient because we're 9-10 days into this. Third is this idea of voluntary distance learning. K through 5, and it may be more in issue 3 through 5, we're doing great work with the design given to us by the state. Nearly every district is folding the voluntary distance learning students into a designated classroom, such as we are, meaning what would be their classroom. Only 2 districts down in this region have separate remote classrooms. Right now, that's Greenwich and Fairfield. They've hired a lot of additional teachers to do that. Everyone else is taking our approach that you are, as a voluntary distance learning student, remote into the classroom you would be in if you were in the hybrid. But we know we can do better on that. And in many ways, those 3 things settle down on the following: helping our teachers be as strong as possible with the technology they have, helping to get the technology to work as well as it can. Dan DeVito and team are doing great work. It's still their times, not their fault, that you got to get the technology to work really well. Getting mics so people can hear each other, working on that. There are a set of technological issues that are both the actual technology and helping teachers be very adept at the use of that technology. The other part of this is raising the comfort level so pedagogically, instructionally, teachers are comfortable managing a group via Zoom and managing a group in front of them. So whether we're in early dismissal or we're in full day hybrid, those are things we need to improve on, work on, and the commitment, I think you'll hear from the principals, Ken, Dan, Phil, Tracy, is to, over the next couple of weeks, begin to really go after that, working with the teachers in each building, working district-wide. I think it might be best right now, as opposed to going building by building, might be a chance for the board to ask some questions of the principals, ask some questions of Ken, Dan, Tracy, Phil, on any of these pieces. We've done a lot of meetings. We did a pre-meeting here. I think the sense is to have really a discussion around your questions as to where we are, given that overarching framework.
You know, Bill, a couple of things I'd like to say first. You know, one of the things board members are getting emails, you're getting emails about area districts going in the lower schools full time, 5 days a week. You know, we all know that. We all know what's going on. So it's not like it's a surprise, right? You talk to the superintendents, I speak to the board chairs. There are several districts that are going back full time, 5 days a week in the lower schools, some K through 4, some K through 5, maybe one K through 8. So that's out there, and it may not be the right model for Weston, but we have to basically acknowledge the fact that this is happening around us, and we need to understand how we go from where we are to ultimately a normal school day, because you know the thought of spending the entire year in this mode is really not something that people are really planning on, right? So I think that we just need to get that out there and understand that we understand what's going on around us, but we have to actually come up with a model that's right for Weston, right? The second thing is that I think we should be what I think the other board members, and I'm not speaking for the other board members, they'll have an opportunity, but I think that the public really, other than understanding what the constraints are, everyone wants a plan, okay? What do we need to improve, by when? And obviously, things like happened last week can set us back. Public health indicators may get worse, and that may drive a decision. But given things staying the way they are, right, we need some, you know, whatever that is, you know, what needs to be done to get to the next step, and when can we do that, right? And so that I think is what everyone is really looking for, so they can actually, you know, as much as you can plan your life, at least everyone, including the teachers, can plan accordingly. But any other board members have any comments?
Yeah, the only thing that I would like to share with the public and the board, Bill, you sent the board an email on September 10th with regards to the instructional time and how it's impacting Weston, not so much in the upper schools, but in the lower schools. Can you just share with the public kind of what the lower schools are facing with instructional time, please?
Yeah, I think I'm not recalling the September 10 email exactly, but I think we can speak to instructional time. Laura can definitely do that. Patty can do that.
Sure, I can speak to that. And Patty, if you want to jump in, and then of course, Ken for the curriculum and instructional lead point. First, I just wanted to make a comment about, I do know there are questions being raised about bringing K-5 students and elementary students in 5 days a week, full time in other districts. For us to do that, we're saying, we can't commit to the 6 feet social distancing. We just can't.
Yep.
And those may be decisions those districts are making. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think the 6 feet is important. I think what's happened this week may be case in point to that. When we commit to the 6 feet, when we commit to the masks, we are reducing the chance for transmission. If we do have a positive case, or we do have an exposure, but we have committed to 6 feet and wearing masks, we are reducing the possibility of transmission.
And Laura, and when you do speak to other, when in conversations with other districts, they do admit that there's no way they're going to meet the 6 foot, and they may not even meet the 3 foot, right? Which is surprising to me.
Correct, and that was just the point I wanted to make.
Yeah.
I think we've made that commitment as a district, and I agree with that. I think the safety, to err on the side of caution, when we start bringing students back into school, and we've opened with that commitment, and I guess that's all I'm going to say about that. We cannot commit to the 6 feet social distancing. In terms of the instructional time, for us at the elementary level, it's really quality over quantity is a big priority for us. For elementary students to sustain on technology for extended periods of time is more of a challenge than it is at the middle and high school level. I'm not saying it's easy for them, but for 4 and 5-year-olds, it's quality over quantity is what we're striving for, and always looking to improve, always looking to expand our programs and to enhance them. But we're not looking to add time just for the sake to say we're adding time. I can give some examples. I do know there are part of the confusion, I think, and a lot of the questions coming from the public there are so many different models out there, even just within Connecticut. The Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off, Thursday, Friday, mornings versus afternoons. There are some districts that are bringing students in daily for just 2.5 hours in the morning. That's not more instructional time. It's just a different setup. And in Weston, we chose the alternating days because we wanted to balance the frequent contact, but also have them in school for, we have them in school for 5 hours. So we have already seen from the beginning of school, from the first day of school to today, which is day 11 of instruction, the comfort level of teachers is increasing on a daily basis. Their comfort for interacting with the students on voluntary distance learning. I've gotten some very positive feedback from some of those families about how surprised they were and impressed that the teachers really made their child feel a part of the class community, through being able to work with the students in front of them, and then also include the students who are learning from home. So we're always looking to enhance and improve our instruction. Technology certainly was a big learning curve at the beginning of the year, and we are, we've worked through some of the challenges we have had with that. It took a little time to get the iPads up and running. There were some unanticipated technical difficulties we had with those. And we're going to continue to work through that. So I'm going to pause and let Patty speak
Right,
Because
right. Sorry, we're pretty much in sync. One of the things is that, you know, we really made a conscious decision about doing the every other day. I think not only to keep the curriculum and keep students engaged, but really also for that social emotional aspect of being in school. I mean, this is so new for our kids, and being in masks and being in school after they haven't been in for 6 months. So really just having that continuity of coming in and being engaged, and then, you know, being either in school and online. You know, as Bill said, you know, our next level of work is to continually make our students more synchronous, to really get them more involved on a day-to-day basis. And that is, you know, our next level of work. Our teachers are working really hard. You know, every day they're getting more comfortable and more skilled with the technology, which is, I mean, it's critical in order to be successful in this kind of teaching. And, you know, we're really looking forward to you know, tomorrow we have a professional learning day, which will be focusing a lot on the curriculum, and then how we bring that, on the technology, and how we bring the curriculum through that technology. So it's a work in progress. I mean, I feel like we're in a real rhythm. I sort of felt sad that we had to take a little bit of a step back, but I think we learned a lot from taking these 2 days and being distance learning completely, even though we kept the hybrid. But I feel like our teachers are in a nice rhythm now of really of the synchronous, asynchronous, and building that collaborative classroom, which is so critical for our students.
Right. And Patty brought up a good point. I just wanted to make one more comment. At the kindergarten through second grade level, K1 and 2, particularly for kindergarten and first, we're still teaching the students how to use the tools, how to use the technology, how to navigate all of that. So when they are either in distance learning because the district's in distance learning, or because it's their at-home day, we have to teach them all that at the early elementary level. It's not something they're used to, which is what happens when you get into the intermediate, middle, and high school. It becomes second nature for them. They've already learned how to use the tools. They're just accessing the curriculum. We're doing both. We're teaching the curriculum, and we're teaching them how to use those technological tools. And it takes a little time for the students to get comfortable with that, for our families to, you know, who are supporting their children on their at-home days. It's a learning curve for them as well. And that is something we're doing. Certainly, if we could have our students all in person, you know, at the early elementary years, that of course is everybody's preference, I think, in all schools. But, you know, with the social distancing, unless we, you know, had the room to spread them out and to add staff, you know, I think we've got a nice balance right now.
I just wanted to follow up on Ruby's point, because I think, you know, my understanding is that there's a 900-hour requirement of instructional time. And with the shortened day at Hurlbut and the intermediate school, mathematically, we're not going to make it too much longer, you know, on a shortened day schedule. So I think it's important to shift as quickly as we can to the full hybrid, full day model. That way we're able to meet the instructional time requirements as quickly as we can. And then, you know, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that in case I'm mistaken. And secondly, I think, you know, per Tony's point about developing a plan and moving forward, you know, once we get to a full day hybrid, which I would hope could happen, you know, very soon, you know, starting to think what's the next step. And, you know, if the social distancing can't happen, if we have to go sub 6 feet, you know, how far sub 6 feet are we looking in the buildings? And are we looking independently? Is each building making a decision about which model works best for them? And if that's the case, can we think about what our options are with respect to spacing district-wide? Because if the high school is making a choice that's different in terms of what a full day hybrid looks like than what we're making at Hurlbut or WIS, do we free up some space potentially to get the kids in for more days or longer periods of time? Even if it's not 5 days, can it be 4 days? Can it be half days on the days that it's not full days? And if we really decide, I think we need to get the information first. And if the board can meet more regularly so that we can continue to look at these issues and move forward in terms of gathering the information necessary to make decisions. If it's the decision is that the spacing is so problematic, can we look at a model that has 5 days of consecutive instructional time, where on the days where a cohort isn't in the building, that it's synchronous, interactive Zooms, so that everybody K through 12 is on their off day participating, and that the curriculum is advancing. So instructional day 1 is Monday, instructional day 2 is Tuesday, 3 is Wednesday. And I recognize that these are not easy tasks by any stretch. But when I look at how far we've come from March to where we are now, I think the sky's the limit in terms of what we can do. And I just want to make sure that as a board that we're supporting, the principals and the teachers in thinking and continuing to probe and get the information we need to start formulating steps forward. Because frankly, everybody, you've done such an amazing job so far. So thank you.
I guess the only comment I would make about the instructional time, and I'm sort of teeing you up, Laura, for this is to make the distinction between instructional time, which is actual time in the classroom, learning time, versus time when the children are just together, being together, whether it's snack time or lunchtime or outside time. And that is also valuable for the youngest kids, even if they're not in actual instruction time. For the kids who are isolated at home, the littlest ones really need that social interaction more than any of them. They all do. But so when we talk about increased instructional time, I know there's a 900-hour mandate, but there's also just the time that children will be together. And we talked about this in curriculum. We touched on it slightly. Do you want to comment on that at all?
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying, Taffy. So the time they're in, the in-person time is, heavily instructional now. And the students are together. They're part of the community, they're interacting. I've been very impressed with the creativity of our teachers, the energy, enthusiasm to make the time together engaging, fun, interactive. Yes, we're honoring the social distancing and 6 feet apart, but there are very creative ways to make that interactive and to make them feel like a community and still socialize and have fun with their friends. Very, very creative. And I think the ELC, I wanted to just mention them too. They're in school every day. The class sizes allow for the social distancing. They're small enough that we were able to bring everybody in every day. And, with 3 and 4-year-olds, the social distancing is important, and they've made it engaging, interactive, and to feel like play and developmentally appropriate. And it is a different model. The at-home days, the teachers have really been working with their morning meeting times and setting up the students for some home learning time. I do also hear from families who are concerned about a longer day. When Bill's email went out about conversations for next steps, I had parents reaching out to me saying, it's long enough. I don't want my child in school full day, 6 feet apart. And that's a balance,
That's interesting.
Yeah. Or not on screen time as much as they are, or are concerned that as we, increase and enhance our program, if students at the primary age, and it may be a WIS question too, across the elementary years, they are concerned about the screen time and, may not want their children zooming in, and what are the options for not zooming in as much.
I guess what I'm looking for, and I'm sorry to be beating a dead horse here, but I just want to be very clear as to what's going on, because Bill, your email on September 10th was very clear to us. And that was that in the lower schools, the state has given us 100 hours that we can use freely at our discretion to play with. And we are using those 100 hours in the month of September and in the month of October. So we only have 2 months where we can operate on an early dismissal hybrid before we get into curriculum trouble at the state level in terms of hours. So sorry, I just wanted to repeat that so that we're all on the same page, because that's what the email explicitly stated. And it should be a red flag in terms of what is our strategy now that we know that here is a looming deadline of come and end of October, we are in curriculum hour trouble. What is our strategy going forward? And I actually am a bit nervous on using that 100 flex hours all up front. Who knows what the year is going to bring us. I would say that we're kind of putting all of our eggs into one basket up front, and then we're not going to have any flex time in the back half of the year.
If you mean if there's another big.
Exactly. I just, the email was sent out with, this is the predicament we're in, without a strategy on how we're going to move forward. So that's what I'm looking for, that strategy.
If I could chime in here, Ruby, just to clarify what the requirements are. So we all know about the 180-day, 900-hour requirement for a school year. State has given some flexibility at the beginning of the year for us to have a 177 school day year. We used some of that time to ramp up in our first 5 days with teachers, and I think appropriately so. Typically, each year at each of our schools, we average about 1,000 hours of instruction. So that 100 hours you're talking about is really the difference between the requirement and, because of the length of our day and the amount of instructional time we get in, we have about, 100 hours there, which allows us for this transition into schools, but the state hasn't actually come out and said, you have 100 hours of flexibility. It just so happens that, as we look at our district annually, we've had about 1,000 hours with our typical schedules each year. So you are correct that, if, by the end of October, we're going to start to be at a point where, unless the state gives us additional flexibility with the 900 hours, we would be in jeopardy of falling below that 900 hours. So just to add a little bit more context to what you said.
So again, I'm pushing for, why are we waiting to the end of October to propose a strategy? Why aren't we talking about our options? So we did, why aren't we talking about our options now?
We are, and we've been talking about them with the team for the last week or two. We had flagged that issue. And again, Ken clarified that the flex, was the days that the state gave us. The hours are our own, our own management piece. But this is what we're talking about now. I mean, this is why the principals and Cabinet Plus have been meeting, in the midst of trying to start the school year. We've also been meeting to, particularly at the elementary level, think about that issue of instructional time and how to address it. If later in the year there are larger effects on us, the state will probably come in with some kind of flexibility if there are larger effects, such as we all have to go in statewide to full-on distance learning, because if COVID-19 pandemic kicks up to the level that we can't be in district, there'll be, this is the whole point of our conversation now. The whole point of my note summarizing about 2 weeks worth of conversations was we're doing this exact piece, looking at, can we shift effectively with quality from the early release into the full day hybrid, and what's it going to take to get there? And that's the conversation we're having. And also that even if right now we, boom, tomorrow went into full day hybrid, there's some pieces there that we need to get better at. And that's what was laid out in the Friday note, and the principals here have begun to underscore.
I think, Bill, I think your Friday note was a good starter. But I think that and as a board, we get to meet once a month. We'll probably be meeting twice a month on this topic from now on. But what I'm hearing is goals, right? Which are absolutely goals that we should want to achieve to improve how we deliver the curriculum. But what we're not hearing at this point, and maybe it's not time, I don't know, but we're not hearing for specific tasks and timeline for what we expect to improve, how we expect to improve it, and what will it look like by when. I think that is, as a board, unless, our supervisory responsibilities, our oversight responsibilities are really hard to really discharge on just notions of we have to improve in these areas without having specific plans and time. Now, this may be something that's being developed, but if it is being developed, it's probably a good idea to talk about when we can actually see that. Because I think that's really where we are. We're at the point where everyone wants to see what better looks like, and better may not be more time in school. You tell us what better looks like, what you need to do to get better, and how long will that take? I don't know. It's very simple to say, hard to do, but that's kind of what everyone is looking for.
Yeah, I think, earlier on, we had talked about October 1 as, a deadline for considering shifting to the full day hybrid. So I guess I'm wondering, is that still on the table, or are we saying now that we might need more time than that? I think obviously this past week's, events are, a step backward, but when I still look at the public health metrics and the leading indicators, which is really the only information that the state is providing to us and the guidance that they're giving us and how to make these decisions, we're still in the low category and the bottom half of the low category. So, it feels like, if we had set October 1 as an internal deadline for seeing movement or change, and the health metrics are telling us that we're doing well, that this might be a good time to make that change. I personally feel we should move to the full day hybrid as soon as we can.
Well, the plan had been that as we got into the year, saw it was going, as we got into early October, we would see if it was possible to make the shift. It was always something we would consider how we could do it. The team's been looking actively at it. It's not an easy shift to make. It requires a changing in the scheduling at the elementary schools. It requires potentially some redeployment of staff. There's some logistics issues that have to get sorted through. October 1 was never the definite boom, flip the switch, will go. We had purposely never set it that definite. Some districts have had. There's not a district that set a date and held to it, frankly. I'm still going to be curious if some of the districts going full back in continue to do that. New Canaan's into it phasing this week, but we'll see. What we're saying is we've been actively looking at it. We flagged 3 critical areas of quality that we need to get after. We know where the teachers are on this. They're strongly saying we're only 9 or 10 days into delivering a totally new way of doing things. There are aspects of this we'd like to do better, and it's not simply extending a day to make it work. But we are actively looking at it. I think one of the things we can do clearly is to say, relative to quality indicators, as well as more specific looking at what are the limits to getting to the full day hybrid. So quality, what is a plan specifically for getting after the quality? You never guaranteed any outcomes in education. So you'd say, here's what we're hoping to help move the bar on, move it along. Similarly, for those things that are really barriers, and I just have to say that, barriers to getting to full day hybrid, what are those and what would it take to get around them? That those are things we can come back to the board with more clarity, but just to be direct, there's no way by October 1 that we can make the shift. And I mean, we never said October 1, boom, we would do it. We said as we got towards early October, we would see what was possible as to how we were opening up. And again, what we opened up in, we had never done before, never tried before. And we're working to make this work really well. And
But no, listen, we were remote from March, and then we set out a survey, and I brought this up in the task force committee. The expectation was already out there on what parents were looking for and what they wanted and what they needed. So we had talked about 2 days was going to be 2 days worth of curriculum. I'm just speaking for lower schools right now. That's not happening. And I see you flagging it here as one of your 3 items on what we need to work on, but that conversation was had over the summer. So the fact that we're still flagging something, months later, we should have been combating that and having those types of conversations on what can we do to avoid being in this predicament over the summertime. And I will say, with the 3 modes that we sent out of full hybrid part-time, hybrid full-time, and full day, we should have had an understanding on what it was going to take to get there. So by saying we can't get there by October 1st because there's a lot has to go into it, then in my mind, the upfront planning didn't happen.
well,
Because we're small enough and nimble enough. We 4 schools, 2,200 students. We should be able to move quickly. We
never said October 1. I'm looking at the document. August 11th, submitted in the public record. I said, approaching October 2020, the district would assess shifting to a hybrid full day scenario. We've also never been in this operational mode. We designed very carefully. We invested in technology. We did professional development, professional learning over the summer. So we positioned ourselves to go into the hybrid early dismissal. We're 9 days into something that nobody has ever tried or done. It is not accurate to tie it back to March. That is just false. We worked over the summer to open up, prepare. We're doing that. And right away, we're flagging, now that we're into this, several areas of improvement. I can tell you, other districts around here, the superintendents are not flagging these areas of improvement. We're doing it, and we're saying we can come back to you and give you how we're going to move that along. October 1 was never stated. I'm looking at the.
Okay, so can I just say, I don't think it's fruitful to decide whether or not it was October 1 or October 15. I think what Tony has asked for, and that I think is critical, is a plan, is an actual plan with an actual date on it. And if the date changes, by a couple of weeks because of some COVID events, that happens, but the plan needs to be shared publicly with the board, with the staff, with the parents, and then we know where we're going and we go there. And I don't think that March, April, May, June can be thrown out as not an experience that we benefited from and launched from. I mean, I absolutely believe that 4 months or 3.5 months in the spring were very valuable and really informed how we do this work. And whether the September launch was significantly different from the spring, I would hope it was. And it's been excellent. There's no one's questioning whether it's, crappy or great, but it drew upon 3 months of learning in real time in the spring, distance learning. That was the time where we could say we'd never done this before. September, we added some things and they were excellent. And the summer was work time. So I just want to say, I think we're in great shape. We're just looking for the plan and the deadline, Tony.
Yeah, I think that's right. This is not a commentary on how we've executed so far. This is more a view that, okay, now we're here. Now what's the next couple of steps? And when can we expect to achieve those next couple of steps? Because that's what everyone is asking for.
Yeah, no, and I'm agreeing with you. And I'm saying that, and if we opened up effectively, which I think we did, it was because we were actively learning from March forward over the summer, actively planning. Thanks to the board, we plugged a significant technology hole, new technology tools, but even the teachers last week in the WTA meeting said, you gave us a lot of new technology this summer. Well, we had to, and that was based on the learnings from March forward, and it's getting people up to speed with it. So that's fully what we're doing, and identifying where the gaps are. You know, the team is straight out opening, delivering, and now we hear the call to begin to modify, and we're going to look at how to do that, being clear on, be it the early dismissal or the full, here are things we have to do better, and looking at what's going to keep us from moving into a full day hybrid, and can we overcome those issues. But very carefully said we would see how we do, and as we get into October, see if we can make the shift. So we can come back with more fine-tuned planning on the three major areas listed in Friday's note, and more detailed listing of what are those particular barriers and how do we get around them. For example, right now, the pickup and drop off for elementary schools, it's critical that it's organized the way it is. To do that effectively at Hurlbut, we need certain staff that we have by contract with the early dismissal. If we go to a full day, we don't have those staff to help with drop off. This may sound, I know as a board, you know, it's not a small matter. But then we'd say, okay, that shouldn't be enough to stop us, but do we need to extend the staffing time? Think about modifications to pay, overtime. One of the things that's emerged here is if the high school is working very, very well in its program, its approach, we've tended to, for busing reasons, keep the 4 districts in 2 pairs, so we have 2 bus runs. If we say, you know, and these are the thoughts we've been having. Do you keep the high school where they are? Do you do the middle school differently? That's a 3rd bus run. Are we prepared to invest in a 3rd bus run, or is there some other creative solution around transportation? You know, so that's part of that. So these are all the pieces, but to be very clear and specific, we can bring back to the board against the 3 quality pieces, what's the plan? And then on the logistics issues, to give it a title, what are the logistic challenges that would prevent us from going to full day hybrid, and what are our solutions to get around them?
So what I would propose is probably have a special meeting of the board as soon as it's practical to go through those plans, probably. Maybe, you know, whenever we have them together in the next week or so. Probably the best thing to do, where we can have just one agenda, which is to look at specific plans. I see the time moving. Can we move to the upper schools?
Sure, I'm happy to start. First of all, I just want to thank Taffy for recognizing the excellent opening. I don't think our teachers are getting enough credit for the great work that they're doing. And while we are building on what we learned last spring, things are very different. That was full on distance learning. Now we have students in the building. The things that kept me awake at night all summer about mask wearing, how would middle schoolers do with wearing masks for 3 or 4 hours, let alone trying to extend that to a full day. How students could manage being in front of a screen for longer periods of time. We developed this hybrid model with a lot of thought, putting priority on safety, the safety protocols, the health, in addition to trying to maximize the instructional time, the curriculum. And we asked a lot of our teachers in this hybrid model at the secondary level, and it's been a struggle. they've been doing a great job. They've been doing excellent work. But at the middle school in particular, where we put on these extra safety protocols about cohorting and originally trying to keep students in the same room for their academics, it just became really unsustainable for the teachers. They're doing an excellent job, but by going to 5 different classrooms and having to take their technology with them and hook it up in different settings, it was taking away from some of the instructional time, adding stress and making them feel like they couldn't do the excellent, best job that they're used to doing. Although I have to tell you, I'm amazed with what they've done. I'm amazed with our back to school night, how the team leaders and the teachers contributed to that site that we have for the hybrid distance learning. But we are looking at how to make it better and how to improve and how we can expand. You know, Lisa and I have talked about the plan that we put in place for the full day hybrid actually is a loss of instructional time. Unless we can get to a point where we can give teachers the experience that they have the tools, they still need more training because we've only had these tools for a few weeks. They would need to be able to get to the point where they can successfully teach the students in front of them and manage the other cohort zooming in live. I think that's where we all want to get to. But we knew that last spring, our experience told us that it was a challenge just to manage 24 students on a Zoom, or at that time, a Google Meet screen. So I think we know where we need to go. I think we need to get better. And having the VDL students Zoom in right now is giving us that experience that we've never had before of teaching live to students in front of us and managing the VDL Zoom students. You know, I have to say, I'm proud of our teachers. I'm proud of our students for maintaining the safety protocols. We've been getting excellent communication back and forth. The parents have been communicating with teachers directly as we encourage them to, with counselors at times, and even with the administration. So I just think, you know, it is a work in progress. I think we do need to, I agree with what everybody said. We need a clear plan with clear goals and clear deadlines. That's what we've been talking about as administrative team as recently as just this afternoon. And we're ready to do the work. And I think getting the teacher's voice now that they're living it also is going to make it that much stronger. Lisa, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Dan, what do you feel is the biggest obstacle to achieving that goal that you set out?
I think it's having more of the training and the experience with the tools. I just think it's really hard when these classrooms, when you see them now, it sounds like it's only 12 students, maybe 13, even 14 in a few cases, in some of the academics. Of course, some of our PFAs are even larger. Like chorus is taking up the entire cafeteria. So if you're trying to manage an entire space with students spread out that far, and then trying to manage students that are on a Zoom call like this and make sure they're engaged, that's a skill set. And I think our teachers are learning from experience and learning from each other. That's a big ask right now for teachers, to ask them to do that. But I think some of the other obstacles are, you know, we can get to them. It's just, you know, like we've said, set the goals, set the dates, and then start coming up with how to solve these challenges. I think we can get there, but it's going to take a lot of input from all of the participants. You know, the teachers need to have their voice heard in how we do this.
Yeah.
Okay, high school. So I'll be quick. I just want to reiterate a couple of points. You know, we're trying to balance health and safety with quality, not quantity, or I would talk minutes of instruction. And it's a tricky balance because on the one hand, people say, oh, it would be great if, like, okay, if we had them in all day and the blue cohort was in and the gold did not zoom in, we would be losing instructional time. So then people say, okay, let the gold zoom in then. But if the gold zooms in while the blue are in front of the teachers, what inevitably has been happening is that you're seeing it's just difficult because you have to manage, as Dan says, the two groups. So you're also trying to do the social emotional piece because the kids will say, all feedback says, the best thing about Western High School is the teachers. And it truly is. I mean, they make my job so easy. So to connect with those kids in the classroom while you're worrying about the other half being able to zoom in, it will then limit the instructional pedagogy that you will use. There will be more lectures. There will be more just sage in the stage presenting. And then you have the argument, my God, my kid can't stay on the screen all day, all this time. What's going on? So, you know, if you don't have them in, they're saying, oh, they're bored at home or they have work, whatever, bring them in. But then the instruction changes. And then the argument is, well, other districts are doing it. But to me, the devil is in the details. Other districts are doing it by block scheduling. Some districts right around here, they're having only 4 classes a day, 80 minutes. Then they're telling their other cohort, just log in for the first 15 minutes.
I read, sorry to interrupt you, Lisa, but I just heard about a district not near here doing 2 classes only for 3 weeks at a time. Solid, just intensive 2 classes. Yeah.
So, you know, then the problem will be, I mean, we have spent so much time in professional learning, reading books as a school on differentiation, how to scaffold, how to plan appropriately, how to use technology. The science department's looking at all these virtual labs, how to combine them with in-person labs. And it will truly change the way that we instruct if we do all day cohort and the other one is just logging. It will be so hard to sustain those kids, especially, well, in both settings, whether you're sitting there listening or you're logging in. So we are being very careful. We're monitoring the instruction. The curriculum instructional leaders and the 4 admins go out and see the in-person instruction. We go and see when the teacher is doing the distance learning. What are they doing? What are the tasks are we doing? How can we make it better? We've had admin where we mingle where the teachers have come in and they're saying, this is working well right now. Clearly, I mean, I hope we get to, by next spring, our old beautiful regular schedule that we all loved so much. But we also can't go on a Monday through Friday schedule at the high school because we have science labs, because we have PE, because we have health. We must have an 8-day rotation. And we figured out how to do it with the blue and the gold. But we, you know, the idea of like kids knowing in the younger schools, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we won't be able to get there at the high school. So then I think it does behoove us to look at overall, what do we need to do as a district? And maybe it is different because for us right now, it's working well at the high school. We want to increase our clubs and things like that in the afternoons to be able to have more in-person things. But I would say it's not that we're opposed to going to something like that. We just want to be careful because the minute the instruction, the quality of the instruction goes down, then we lose the kids and we're not one of the #1 high schools in the state. So,
you know, what you're saying, Lisa, is one, every school has different challenges and a different model might be appropriate, which is fine, right? I mean,
exactly. I think that that's true. And just to clarify something, it's not driven by the lack of custodians in the cafeterias on a full day. It's just another piece of the puzzle that we have to work out. We can work out anything. I mean, we have a real big collective capacity to be able to figure it out. But it's the details that we have to get it right. Because
So
it's not instruction, but it's also safety that is at stake.
So Lisa, if you could make one change, like wave your magic wand, make one change within the boundaries that we're currently living under. So it's not that magic a wand, but what would be the change you implement right now?
I would bring in the clubs more. I would look for a way to figure out how we can have more in-person activities with company, with the clubs, in cohorts, following the rules, putting them, and that's what we're working towards with our virtual club fair and all of that. I think that that's important. That, and along with that, keep pushing the teachers, sharing the best practices. And we're fortunate because we do have common curricular time to be able to expand their instructional repertoire with the balancing of the both groups.
So do you think at some point there could be a deviation from how the middle school and the high school operate in this hybrid world?
Are you asking?
You mean the middle school and the lower school, Tony? The middle school and the lower school?
No,
he's asking middle
right
school, high
now,
school.
right now,
Oh.
we basically, if I'm looking at right now, we're kind of, we have an upper school, lower school model, right? But within the upper school, I'm hearing a couple of different things, if I'm hearing correctly, which would mean that maybe there might be some scope for the high school and the middle school to operate a little bit differently than they're operating today, which would be fine. But is that potentially where we might be heading?
I think it could be. I think that we need to examine all possibilities and to make sure that that the students are getting what they need at that particular level. And I think that, yeah, you worry about the bus and the cost and everything else, but it's certainly something that we can talk through. And, Dan and I collaborate all the time. Drew does with Matt, Julie, and Mark. So there's no harm in engaging in the conversation and figuring out what the downfalls are and the challenges and how to work through it. If it helps, yes.
I mean, in a way, we do have different schedules that we've played with to make them work together this way. So there's ways that it still could be tweaked. But remember, we also developed these schedules in a way that would allow us to collapse them, expand them, depending on the circumstances. And I have to say one more thing. I've heard from a few teachers already who were so happy that when we went temporary remote learning these past 2 days, that we kept the same model. Because the teachers need and the students need some sort of familiarity. We can't constantly be changing the model. It takes a while to get used to the new model. It takes a while to really perfect it, figure out what needs to be fixed and get better at that before I think what I would use more as evolving into the next phase rather than some dramatic flip to a new model.
If I may underscore that, I mean, we're very committed to bringing back to the board what you're asking. And it may be really obvious, but let me state the obvious. Schools set up an approach and they stay in that approach. You gear up for that approach. And we've been, we've been gearing up since March, learning, prepared over the summer, hybrid early dismissal. And that's why this top of that April 11th memo to you as a board said, we will consider, we will try, because we need to consider and try, but I can, the teachers need that stability, and you're hearing from the principals, because I spent a lot of time with them on this topic in the last 8, 9, 10 days, as they know that modifications and shifting from an existing plan are very difficult to do when you're in the middle of teaching and doing this. So we're committed to coming back and talking with the board about it, but it's highly out of the ordinary, and we're in a very out of the ordinary time. Other districts around us are tending to go if they can pull it off. And I've just learned tonight by text, one of those districts out there is back down on going fully in, as they were talking about, but they've gone from some kind of hybrid to full in, because we all know how to do full in. It's this modification of a brand new approach. And so we're committed to engaging in the conversation with the board, but we already are checking the pulse of teachers and others. And we just have to be very cautious that we recognize what has worked well here, and we try and hold on to that and then improve the pieces that we can. And sometimes a whole system model shift may not let us get at the core quality issues. And that's why I have emphasized those 3 critical quality issues that we need to get after. So we can come back with more clarity on what that would mean and our hope for an adjustment on that.
Yeah. one of the things I think to keep in mind is that, there's only so much optimization that's practical for temporary plans, right? So each one of these stages are temporary stages, right? To the immediate long-term goal of getting back. So you may try to optimize to the fullest each stage, which may not be the right thing to do, which is there's only so much optimization that's practical for each stage because it's temporary, right? You want to constantly be evolving, right? And so making a temporary stage perfect may not be the most optimal strategy here. So,
I think that's very well put, Tony. I think that's exactly right, is that the minute you become static in the stage you're at, that means we're not moving towards, the next
I mean,
one.
if this was if this was the status quo for forever, then you continue to optimize this particular stage. But I think that you have to be careful of how much optimization you do, knowing it's temporary. I don't know, just keep that in mind for whatever that's worth.
And we're committed to staying in this conversation. I just, want to flag that we're trying to do something here that almost never happens within schooling. That in the midst of delivering what you're doing, do a very fundamental shift in the midst of it. And you've got a team committed to trying to do that. But, we've been reaching out, we've been talking to the staff, we've been listening. And there are areas around the core approach to modify, but some are saying, my goodness, even to go to hybrid full day, that's a pretty dramatic shift, because to get to hybrid early dismissal as well as we opened, that was 6, 7, 8, 9 works of focus time without schooling underway. To try and then make modifications to full day, it's not simply adding on the 2 hours or 3 hours, because it's staffing, it's scheduling, it's assignments, it's a whole set of things. And
Yeah,
so
I'm sorry. I just want clarity here, just so that I can feel comfortable with what we're doing here. When other districts have put a plan together and committed to make these shifts, these big shifts operationally, whatever, why can't we? What are the roadblocks that Weston's facing that we can't follow suit and do the same operational shifts that other districts are doing?
Well, other districts aren't necessarily making the big shifts. I can go down the list. I'm every day talking to other superintendents. New Canaan has gone from a hybrid to full back in. That's going from a temporary to something everybody knows how to do. Ridgefield was thinking of doing that, and tonight they backed down into staying the hybrid. Darien next week is committed to going from a hybrid to everybody back in. We all know how to do everybody back in, but taking one new approach and modifying into a second new approach, I don't know a district in the state of Connecticut that's doing that. And I'm in very close touch, and just down this way, I don't know a district that's modifying from a new approach to a modified new approach. They're going from the new approach to something they know really, really well, which we know, which is all back in. If we could fit everybody back in, we'd have no problem. If the
other
board says we
districts
will
are fitting.
reduce the social distancing and then say, let's have everybody back in. But I just want to be clear, because we're committed to working on this, but we need to have what's really happening around us be what we're looking at. Because I know what all those districts are doing. I talk all the time to those superintendents, every day, a couple times, because I have the exact question you have, Ruby. Where are you and how you moving? And they're going from the temporary, trying to get to what we know really, really well, which is full in.
But then do we need to start that full in conversation? If you're saying that the middle ground is just going to be too big of a hurdle to try to accomplish, do we shift conversations and include Dr. Marks and Mark Cooper of going full back, full in at a lower level? I'm just throwing it out there.
that's your decision as a board. I've had a lot of conversations with Laura Marks and Mark Cooper. As a board, you can have those conversations. I think we're very clear on what's happening in a range of schools when you go sub-6. We know that when you go sub-6, you start to set up a lot of problems for controlling COVID-19 spread if it gets into your system. And I mean, we all would want to be full back in. American Pediatric Research is cited. They've gone back and forth on their own research. Dr. Laura Marks, as a pediatrician, will say she does not support that. I would embrace you as a board having those conversations with Mark Cooper and Laura Marks, because the limiter on going full back in is, are we willing as a district to shrink that social distancing down? And we measured it all over. We looked at the idea of, could you have students in other buildings? We don't have that space. You'd have to change furniture as well. Even if we had the space, we looked at all that. But that could be the conversation you need to have.
Yeah.
So,
Bill, I think that I would, the administration recommended these steps, which was hybrid half day, moving at some point to a hybrid full day, and then at some point to a full day. We're at the point here where we're discussing moving from hybrid half day to a hybrid full day. I think we need, I would rather look at what the plan is to move to that next step, because I do think that going to a full in right now, that conversation we could always have that conversation while we're moving to a hybrid full day, right? But I think that stopping right on your tracks, changing the conversation to a purely public health conversation, I think is going to set us all back, right? I think we have to continue on the trajectory that we've plotted out, and also talk about the full in. But I don't think we should stop the conversation and move to a full in conversation, because I think that's going to burn a lot of time and get us nowhere in the immediate. I don't know how everyone else feels.
Well, Tony, I think that just becomes a part of the conversation. If the logistics of trying to do this incremental shift are creating kind of a spinning wheel that we just can't get out of, then maybe you do have the conversation that you eliminate that spinning wheel. And if public health, with all the variables that have to be considered, certain schools, maybe because of the children needing more face time, et cetera, go back to what we do best, with the fallback that if we have to then go back to distance learning based on situations. The whole idea behind this school year was we were supposed to have a plan that is an amoeba that can move and flow. But maybe in reality, we're an amoeba that only has one or two, or, we can't make it 6 different adjustments. Maybe there's a limited number of adjustments, so that throws the full day into it. I think more so for the lower schools, because of needing that face-to-face interaction with the teachers to be able to manage technology. I think the upper schools, just because of the maturity of the students, are able to manage a little more effectively with a remote learning environment. And I don't think we have to judge every school equally. I think they each have their own challenges with navigating the system. And I think we need to have those conversations on an individual school basis. And if that throws in the conversation about funding, about a bus run, let's have that conversation. I guess, just to be honest, I fully realize we're only a couple weeks into the school year, but I think I have some disappointment that the wonderful information that's been shared here now, in some ways is the first time we're hearing it about the work that's being done, the meetings that are happening. And I think part of that is due to our meeting schedule. And maybe if we need to ramp up our schedule so that we can kind of be more real time with the work that the administrators are doing. My comment does not mean that I fully recognize you're working, but the information has to get to us. The information has to get to the public in a more timely manner. And I think that's where some of the frustrations are coming from is, we meet once a month and then there's just all information's coming to us that we haven't had in committee, and there's just a lot going on. But I do think, we have to figure out a way to manage this communication flow between admin and board and public more than once a month.
Oh, yeah. I agree with
Definitely. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, if I might emphasize, I mean, the curriculum committee, we did cover all this ground with the principals and as a way to get here and we can look at ways to tighten that communication loop. I think whether we're full day hybrid or early dismissal, we have 3 critical quality areas we have to get after. And I think because if our blue gold coupling was as tight as we had envisioned it, this conversation would be a very different conversation. People would be feeling we're maximizing that, so that's something we have to fix. Because even if we went to full day hybrid, we're still going to have that problem right now. How do our teachers feel comfortable using the technology tools we've provided? How do we help them do that? Those are things we have to get after. So I would agree, instead of going off to a full day back, everybody back in conversation, I think we have to come back to these 3 critical quality areas we flagged and give you, here's our plan to address those. We began to share those with the curriculum committee. We're sharing them here. We're 9 days into delivering with 2 days out, as nobody anticipated, that took the full attention of the Hurlbut leadership, full attention of the high school leadership, full attention of your superintendent and others. And that's what we're working on. So we've flagged for you 3 areas that we got to improve no matter what. Because if we tomorrow said we're full day hybrid, we'd still have those 3 same problems. You'd still have families saying, you're not tying the blue gold together. You'd still have voluntary distance learning families saying, hey, I need to be tied in better. So that's why we're saying, let's get that quality idea sorted out with a plan. And with it, we can also say, what is keeping us from making a shift to that full day hybrid?
Gina, it's Ruby. I agree with your comment just in terms of tightening up the communication. I had suggested in the task force committee to re-engaging publicly with Mark Cooper and Dr. Laura Marks. Originally, we had spoken about having them attend our October board meeting, but now I'm wondering, and how does everyone else feel about engaging with them publicly sooner than our next board meeting, which I think is October 19th?
Yeah, I think we probably should. If we're going to actually have it all a conversation, I think we should have a special board meeting, as soon as it's practical between meetings to actually discuss specific plans. But, if you want to have a discussion of full all in and get their view, we can invite them at a special meeting. Full all in for the lower schools and, their view, we can do that as well.
I feel like we got their view when we talked to them, though. I don't know that their view.
I don't think their view is going to change. But if that's what the board wants to do, I think I think they were pretty clear on their view.
Yeah, one comment I have, just reflecting on this whole thing, is I urge Bill, I urge you guys and everything, to use us as a resource, right? But realize that it's difficult to be a resource when we're not clear on the objectives and the constraints. So what I'm hearing is, and Dan, I really appreciate you articulating very, clearly challenge of technological bifurcation of 2 different groups simultaneously. So let's get to that level of discussion so we can adapt and solve, right? Because if we don't get to those crucial matters, I think we're just going to have another meeting and having the same discussion. So that's what I would suggest. And also maybe the other point is, it's a complex problem, and I don't think we can fixate ourselves on one of the parameters of the problem, right? So we're not going to get, I think, Bill, you started the talk by talking about, distancing, social, emotional. I mean, we have to go back to all those 4 different dynamics and think about them in a balance, because if we fixate on just one of them, we're not going to get to the right solution. And there's going to be puts and takes. And we have to, the people that enable this is the staff and the teachers, right? So that communication with teachers is that how we can enable them for them to be successful at hitting our next milestone is key. So, but it will be multidimensional. It won't be just about distancing. It won't just be about scheduling. It won't just be about social emotional. It's the whole package.
All right, so, what I will take away is to try to get something scheduled whenever is practically. I'll coordinate with Bill to see what's practical in terms of getting together and discussing the specifics a little bit more of how we, what our goals are and what are the specific items that or challenges we have to overcome to get to the next step. All right. Bill, do you want to go to the next agenda item?
Well, if I might suggest, if we could reorder the agenda a little bit, we've got Chief Henyon and Captain Burdacki who've been waiting. They're here in the Zoom. They're waiting for the student resource update and the SRO memorandum. If we might reverse the order here, I don't know if you need to vote to do that. Move them up ahead so then they don't have to stay on through that. Also, I'm conscious of the principals staying much longer. It might help them to stay at least through the SRO conversation. And then after that, I don't think they need to be with us. I did dismiss Patty already because her back to school night started a few minutes ago. And I don't think the rest of you have back to school nights right now. You may want one, but I don't know you have one. Could we, I don't know if you need to vote to change the agenda, but I would suggest that we allow Chief and Captain to step up.
Yeah, just before we go there, this is a monumental task and everyone is working hard, diligent. We're all doing a great job in terms of pulling this off is not easy. And we realize that everyone is going way beyond the call of duty to make sure all of this works. Our job as a board is to make sure we keep things moving. And it may come off as frustration or whatever you want to call it at times, but we're just trying to do our job, and it doesn't reflect on the fact that we don't, we understand exactly what a monumental task this all is, and we all appreciate all the work that you're doing. So can I have a motion to tweak the schedule? I guess that was the technical term.
I don't know that we need a vote to reorder the agenda, and I would actually prefer not to take a vote because this meeting date was changed. So I don't actually think we have the ability to modify.
Oh, okay. So do we just do
The
it?
agenda was posted, so people know what we're talking about. I would be leery of taking a vote because if we aren't at our regular meeting time that was originally voted on, we don't have the ability to alter.
If we cover everything in a different order, then I think we're fine.
Yeah, I just don't want to take a vote about that because I don't think we're allowed to.
Okay, I'm a little rusty on that part of the rule book. All right, why don't we go to Chief Henyon? Bill?
Yeah, so let me just be really brief in the setup here, but you have two items here that relate to the, and it's actually a typo. It's the school resource officer update, not student. We're fortunate to have school resources officers who are dedicated to our students, but I apologize for that typo here twice. But first, I wanted Chief and Captain to give us an update from where they see it. I think Lisa, with you still here, and then the other principals, you might be able to chime in some on how you see the program working. And then after that, separate item, as happens annually, the board is asked to, if you will, ratify the memorandum, the MOU that provides for this program. So Chief, Captain, I don't know if you want to, start out, and then we'll fill in.
Sure, Bill. Hi, it's Ed Henyon. Can you hear me?
Hi there, yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll be brief because it's been a long meeting already. I just wanted to say, from the chief's point of view and the police commission, we're very much interested in continuing the program. It's never been in doubt from our point of view. It's very successful. It's probably best measured by your administrators, the two schools that we have the SROs in. And part of it is what you're doing tonight is renewing a very clear memorandum of understanding as to the duties and responsibilities of the SROs in the schools. That's one of the things that makes it a very successful program. We continue to have advanced training for our SROs. They couldn't travel this year, but last year they both traveled out to, I believe, the Midwest, to the National Association of School Resource Officers training. And we send them to that training when we can, except for the COVID for this year. And I'm going to just let Captain Brodacki, who supervises them day to day and interacts with the principals constantly on what's going on in the schools with the SROs. So thank you for your consideration.
Yeah, I'll also keep mine to 2 minutes. I realize we have a packed agenda. Matthew Brodacki, Captain of the Police Department. For those who don't know, most of you I know intimately. The SRO program is still humming along. I realize we are all hitting a moving target this year. So we are trying to be adaptive with the police department as well. We, just as an onset of the school year, we're required by law, Connecticut General Statutes, to do 10 security and safety drills with fire drills. So with the school being split into 2 cohorts, we are adhering to that, and we just have to do double the amount of drills, as the school administrators will tell you. And additionally, we have, mask breaks, or when children go outside, anywhere where there is a group of children, we try to have a police officer present, just milling around off in the distance or outside. So, I think from the SRO perspective, we are moving right along. We are dipping more into the lower level schools as well, just to keep those relationships open and communicate with the children and try to reassure them everything's going to be fine. I think, if I can just add one closing comment, I can hear the frustration from many people tonight. I think this is just one of those Maslow's hierarchy of needs of safety and security. And everyone from Harvard all the way down to Weston is doing things differently. They're not, some schools are closing for the entire year. I heard Newtown's going back to school this week or next week, full time. Some are caught in the middle. And then you have parent input, health experts, quote unquote, who are maybe local, the state health experts. So the feedback you're getting is tremendous. I would just say that I've seen all of the administrators' cars in the parking lot until 10 or 11 at night, every night. So I just like to really applaud their effort on the principal level and the leadership level that we see. And I can't imagine that it's easy to have to communicate over and over the messages that you're trying to do when they're changing weekly. But we appreciate it, and we're working hand in hand to help wherever we can.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Chief and Captain while they're here?
No, I just want to say thank you. I think one of the biggest benefits of our SRO program is just giving Weston students an opportunity to have positive interactions with police officers. And I think that that is so critical for all of our students, but particularly now when young students can see clips on the news. I just think for them to have an opportunity to see positive police officers and have positive interactions and know that, you know, they have people they can turn to for help, I think is a bonus to anything that happens as far as the X's and O's and the school day and the security that happens. I just think that's an added benefit right now.
Yeah, I think that the close relationship between the police department and the school district really enriches everyone's experience. And I thank you for all you do and all the people on the force do every single day. It's that close-knit relationship is critical, and it's nice to see how well that's going. With that, can I have a motion?
It's actually under the next item, Tony, but you can certainly pick it up here.
Yeah, just
Apologize for the typo here.
yeah, updating student resource officer memorandum of understanding.
Move that the Weston Board of Education renew the 3-year memorandum of understanding adopted September 23, 2019 between the Weston Police Department and the Weston Board of Education regarding the School Resource Officer Program.
Can I have a second?
Second, Melissa.
Thanks, Melissa. All in favor?
Just quickly, Tony. Sorry, just a quick question. Just for public record, no changes to the memorandum. It's just a carry, just a roll forward.
Correct.
Same, carry
Thank you.
forward.
Just wanted that in the public record. Thank you.
Yeah.
Aye, Taffy.
Hi, Ruby.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Victor.
Hi, Tony.
Hi, Hillary.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Chief and Captain, for hanging in there with us tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Chief. Thanks, Captain.
All right, Bill, where do you want to go to next?
We can climb back up the ladder. I think you'd agree we can allow the principals to, and Mark Berkowitz, unless you have any more questions for the principals and Mark, I might suggest we allow them to not leave their cars in the parking lot late tonight, since obviously the police are tracking them.
I had a question for Mark.
Yep. What, Mark, question?
Can you just give us an update of what's going on?
Sure, I'd love to. I wish I had more to give you, but we're really, it's kind of the same thing. We're getting closer to games, competitions for most fall sports. We have moved from cohorts into full team activities. It was supposed to start Monday. Given the situation we were in, it's going to wait and it's going to start tomorrow. But I know the coaches and athletes are extremely excited about that. They'll get the opportunity to have a real practice with their full team and do more than just conditioning, which we know how much most of our high school students love to condition. So that's a positive. We're still working on football. At this point, the CIAC has deemed this fall season a non-season for football. There are many indications that may be changing. So we're not exactly sure what our football players are allowed to do and aren't allowed to do. So we're waiting for some direction. We're also waiting for confirmation from our local Department of Public Health that they are not going to end up banning all football in the town, including youth football, because that would obviously lead to our high school athletes not being able to play as youths in a club, which is one of the options they are looking into at this time. And there are leagues popping up for them right now to join as senior division youth athletes, if that is allowed. So we're waiting on a lot of things there and hoping to get answers soon so that we can figure out the best way to move forward for all of our athletes. There are other options If that one is taken away from us in ways of modifying football for our athletes, allowing them to continue as a high school team in low and moderate risk activities, as opposed to the 11v11 tackle football that would be considered a high risk activity. So we're looking into all of our different options and waiting for information so we can make an educated decision, or help them make an educated decision, because some of it would be out of our hands if they have other options. All of their fall sports are moving along. You know, I really, again, have been impressed by the coaches and the athletes doing the best they can to, in their cohorts, to social distance and wear their masks to and from practice. And the coaches are basically in masks, you know, for their whole practice. And the athletes are and the volleyball players, you know, give them big kudos, because they were told they had to wear masks even while they're practicing in the gyms. So that's new for them, and they've done an excellent job with that. And we, you know, we asked them to start that even a couple days before it was mandated, just so they could start getting used to it. And they've done a great job. They haven't complained once. I really believe they're just happy that they have a season. And we're happy if we can give them a season. So that's our goal, and that's what we're striving for. And that's really, I think that's it as far as the fall season goes. Games start October 1st. We have home varsity games on the 1st and the 3rd. And then the next week would be a full week of athletics with games Monday through Friday and competitions Monday through Friday, and sub-varsity events on Saturday. The one big question that I keep getting asked is about fans. At this point, the SWC, the Southwest Conference, is still not allowing fans at competitions. It is an ongoing conversation. I will say that the CIAC has recommended strongly that we don't allow fans. They can't require that of us. And I know some other districts near us are trying to figure out ways to allow a certain number of parents and or fans in general. And it is a conversation in the SWC. If I had my way, I would love, just like we've done with everything else, to get the season started. See if how our facilities and our communities and everything handles the beginning of high school sports again. It's been a while. And then maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks into the season, revisit the fan situation and see if we can reacclimate that as well. You know, kind of the walk before we run type of situation. I was talking with one parent and I said, you know, we started in cohorts of 10 and we're only allowed 60-minute practices, and 30 of it was conditioning. So we were kind of lying on our back with our hands and feet kicking in the air. Then we were allowed to roll over, and now we're starting to crawl. And hopefully by the end of this week, we'll be walking. Next week, I'd like to maybe jog and then start sprinting in a week and a half to 2 weeks, if we can use that analogy. But it's not a dead issue for sure. It's going to be discussed at another SWC AD meeting on Thursday and an SWC principal meeting on Friday. We're collecting data and information from all SWC schools. We're trying to keep all SWC schools aligned and on the same page, because I think that makes sense. Will make more sense to our parents, obviously, and to the opposing parents. But it looks like if anything is allowed, it's going to be home fans only. And my guess is it'll, again, be a week and a half to 2 weeks into the season at the earliest. I know that was a lot to throw out all at once, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I do have a question. Is Mark, thanks for the update. Is Weston swimming back to normal schedule?
You're talking about the club or the high school?
I'm talking about the access to the pool for the swimming program.
Yeah, the club you're talking about.
Yes.
Which is a combination of high school and sort of club that interact together, right?
Well, yes and no. It really has nothing to do with the high school. It by law can't have anything to do with the high school.
No, but what he means is there are high school age kids in the
There-
club.
That is true. There are high school age kids in the club. Okay, so yes, in that case, yes, it is. That is accurate. My understanding is that the club had restarted. They've obviously been paused for the last couple of days while the campus has been closed down. And my understanding is that they'll be back in doing what they're doing. Bill, is there anything I'm missing on that, or is that accurate?
All right, that's accurate. I mean, when we went into temporary remote mode, all in-school and out-school activities were not happening on campus. That included Weston swimming. They remain the only external group that's actually using our facilities at this point. And that's because the pool's literally a bubble. You can go in and get out without any overlap with the middle school, et cetera. So for the temporary remote mode, we needed to also put them into hold for 2 days, but we're back with our in-person hybrid tomorrow. So my sense is they'll be back in the pool.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Sure.
Bill, back to you.
Yeah, so what we had passed over was the next item was just for you as a board to hear a bit more about the memorandum of understanding that the Board of Ed negotiating committee arrived in agreement with the WTA in early September. We thought at this point, at least members of the negotiating committee could provide an update to the rest of the board on that document if need be. It's not here for a vote, but for you as board members to inform each other about that memorandum. I can tell you from the standpoint of the administration, it's critical that you were able to arrive at this memorandum of understanding with the WTA. It's been a very important foundation for us as we've gone into this school year, and will continue to be that as we move forward.
Yes, Bill, we went through the details of the memorandum of understanding in the executive session with the remainder of the board, but just basically, this memorandum, the negotiation was really based on concern that teachers had for the reentry into schools under either hybrid, remote, or full. And so while the unions, the WTA really has no negotiation power as to the mode in which the curriculum is being delivered, though we can negotiate on the impact. And really, this MOU addresses 3 areas. One is representation of the teachers in any reopening committees, which the teachers have already been involved in various reopening committees, but this memorializes it in writing a number of issues that were negotiated around working conditions and also paid leaves and accommodation. I think that after many hours of discussion and deliberation with the teachers union, I think we reached a very amicable understanding between the teachers and the board in terms of the issues that they were concerned about going into these negotiations. And while this MOU is 8 pages long with a number of points, my view is that it doesn't cover everything that will come up during the course of the next several months while we're in this COVID-19 kind of mode. I think a lot of the issues that come up are going to really require close collaboration and communication between the teachers, the administration, and the board to navigate through a number of issues which will probably come up and not anticipated and not memorialized in writing. And so while I think this MOU is a great step forward in terms of making the teachers comfortable in the work environment, I think that there are always things that are not going to be memorialized in writing that are going to depend on making sure that we communicate up and down the chain with the teachers every step of the way, and as situation changes to make sure that we work all together so that the entire staff is really comfortable as we kind of navigate through the different modes in which we're delivering the curriculum. I don't know if the other members of the negotiating committee, Gina or Melissa, have anything else to add.
No, look, I mean, I think that the Weston Public Schools aren't who we are without the teachers and staff that work here. And there are always going to be times when there are issues that pop up that have to be resolved. And it's important that both sides work together to move towards a resolution. And I thought that our negotiations around this particular document were constructive and moved us in that direction and set us up to be able to handle issues that may pop up during this crazy school year. So just, thank you to the WTA for their work on this. And, this year, I think as we've seen, only a few days into the school year is going to be a work in process. But this document went a long way to making sure that we had a collaborative partner to even get us to this point in the year and then lay the foundation to continue working forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think you both have done an excellent job of summing it up. It's just when you look around the country and you see what's happening in other districts, I'm just grateful that, here in Weston, we have a good relationship with our unions and that we were able to have such a amicable process and reach a resolution where we were able to start the school year with our children back in the buildings. And that's a win for our students and it's a win for our teachers. So I'd like to thank the WTA for that and the board, the administrators as well.
Great. This document was ratified by WTA. It's not a the board delegated me to sign the document. It's not something that needs to be voted on from the board, but thought it was a good agenda item to add to make sure that everyone understands the deep support and the importance of a highly collaborative relationship that the board and the administration needs with the teachers. And I think this document is a good start. Bill, anything else on that?
Not on this item. I think this covers it.
Okay. Enrollment and voluntary distance learning opt-in update.
Yeah, this appears to you at this point, if we get close on a monthly meeting, instead of you receiving this on a Friday, we held it for what it would have been Monday, but it's obviously today. It has a cover sheet that tracks some of the same analytical points that you get every week. We have folded into it starting several weeks ago, not just the weekly enrollment update, but also the voluntary distance learning count. You see pretty clearly that that we still are a slight growth district, not the kind of growth we thought we would see several weeks ago. But given we're typically in about a 1% decline, this is still a gain for us. So I don't want that good news lost in what might have been. We've not had time to chase down where those enrollees went. I have picked up some information that some of the 7th graders, about 6 or 7, who did not enroll with us, did enroll in a program in Westport, and that program offered a full day. Part of it might have been they were not previously requiring masks. They now are, and actually they're all out on quarantine at this point, case in point. But there was a number there. It may have been, frankly, a full day opportunity, and all of us know with young children why that opportunity is really, really important. So that is a clue to 6 or 7 of the numbers we thought we'd have enrolled, but we didn't. And as we have time, we'll dig into it a bit more. In terms of voluntary distance learning, we did have a drop, which other districts have seen, that as families have come into the district, into the hybrid, once schools start, once they're comfortable that, a variety of things will be going well. So we did see more come in, but as you can see, clearly that that drop off in the voluntary distance number leveled off a bit. So it was almost no change over the last week. So again, I'm trying not to lose the positive story here that our enrollment is up slightly. It's not up as much as we anticipated. Last comment I would make is in terms of the sections added, if we hadn't added those sections, we would have been over the count. We now are slightly under. I would continue, as I've been repeating in each of these weekly memos, underscore that as we look out into the year, having ample teaching ratios is going to be critical if we start to run into any quarantines, all the rest regarding COVID-19. Because you did hear earlier when the principals were on that we are a bit concerned about the availability of subs, and we've seen districts around us struggle with that. So, so that's your enrollment update. I'm hoping to have time to track a little better where those hoped for students went. Was that some of our own leaving, or was it just those who said they'd enroll, not enrolling? So we'll work on that, but it's a bit lower on the list right now.
Yeah, Bill, this actually is a question that's just a request. I seem to remember when we get our big enrollment update from Maloney McBroom, that there is an analysis of the number of Weston students that are attending private school. Because I have a sneaky suspicion that this could be people late withdrawals because they went to private school that caused this swing. So is that part of the Maloney McBroom review, is how many of our Weston students are going to private school?
Well, the state stopped tracking that data a few years ago. So that's why you haven't seen it in that report. But we can, let's bring the question up with them. I think the answer you're going to get is what I just gave. By the time that he reports, and that'll be up for us to try and do a parallel piece, is I'm hoping by then to have at least some listing for you of our hunch on where families may have gone. I mean, in a town like Weston, my hunch is amongst a number of you, you have a pretty good handle on that swing. I do know that is the case here in a number of regards. But I can bring it up with, with Mike Zuba ahead of his presentation to you, which that's due to be before you in the October meeting.
Right, because where I'm going with this is if, we had what appeared to be a fairly substantial increase, and if we've settled back down to this more moderate increase because of people opting for private school, maybe for temporary reasons associated with COVID and wanting a full day, et cetera, we need to understand that going into budget season, because we need to try to get a feel of if those kids are going to come back if we are in some semblance of normality next year. So there's enough students. I hate putting more work on the administration, but there are enough students in play that we're talking budgetary impacts if those families are coming back in because they they made a choice for this year for temporary reasons. Now, I don't know how we gauge that and how we get that information, but those numbers are big enough that if it is people opting for private school, then we kind of need to dig a little. If it's just it was people said they were moving in and they didn't move in, then we can just put that off the back burner and it doesn't matter. But I think that there may be something to the temporary private school shift.
I think that's a really good point. And what will happen is that it will be post agreeing on a budget. All right.
I mean, maybe, but I think that's where we have to in some way try to engage the public to try to gain an understanding of, full respect for the choices made. I don't mean it in any way judging, but just a collaborative discussion so we can try to make sure that the budget that we adopt accurately reflects the
which is a
needs
good point, because I think we need to have kind of, let's say, in one column Malone and McBroom, and then an adjustment to their numbers for anticipate potential as best we can, maybe guesstimate to see what there's kind of a boomerang effect of kids leaving and coming back.
Just so I understand InfoSnap, for information to go into InfoSnap, your address is confirmed, correct? Whether you've purchased the property or you're renting the property. But for your information to go into InfoSnap, that background check is completed.
Yes.
Okay, so those plus 70 students that we had on within InfoSnap back in August, those kids are truly here in Weston.
Meaning whether the InfoSnap or whether they were included, but we had swing outside of the InfoSnap column. So, I mean, we can look at what happened to what the shift was. Sorting out private school decisions is difficult because that's kind of an honor system, how you find it out, and budgeting against that potential would be tricky, but we can see what we can do. It's easier for us to answer Ruby's question because we can go in and look at, you know, from the InfoSnap, did they then move into enrolled? And if they didn't, what happened? I mean, we can track that one a little more easily. You know, so we can take a shot at both questions. The private school one will be a little tricky. And then once a family's made that shift, whether it's truly temporary, we don't know. You know, that's, and again, you know, but we can try and figure that out.
My question is, I think very similar to Ruby's. It's just, this is such a moving target with everything that's going on. So at what point what was our highest number is what I'm curious to find out. I thought I saw 76 new students on one of these. Is it 70? So is that what the highest number was?
Yeah, at one point we were projecting an additional 70 students over the previous year. That was our highest point. And then it tailed way down to where we are now, just a few students ahead of where we were last year. And actually we've settled back almost to within the projection range.
I mean, it's such a moving target this year, but so I guess the way that I interpret that is that 70 new kids moved into Weston.
Well, the ins and outs here, we have to sort out a little bit. It's a little tricky, but we had anticipated 70 new enrollees. Yes.
Okay.
And we have fewer new enrollees. And what's not entirely clear is of that number 70, how many actually did enroll, how many of our returning students didn't enroll. I mean, I think I have a sense of several of our returning students who chose not to return, go off to private school. That may be truly a one-year situation. So we can try and understand that. So meaning, you see what I'm saying? Because of that 70 number, we may have gotten a bunch of the new students, but that could have been the net, maybe those who are here who said they're also going to step out. The ins and outs on this, we have to study. It just we've not been able to devote staff time to tracking it and figuring it out.
Okay.
But we should know, the state should track the number of people that are homeschooling, right? Because they have to access some type of state curriculum requirement or something like that, right? So,
they have to file with the local district, and we keep those records. There are a few more of those forms that I've seen this year, and I'm supposed to sign all of them as superintendent. It's not a large number that I've seen unless they're stuck in the process where people actually aren't doing what they're required to do, which is to submit. We can follow up on that as well.
Any more questions on this? All right, let's move to the next topic, the AFSCME contract.
So you have before you the recommended tentative agreement signed. The negotiating committee brought this forward. It may be best right now to have negotiating committee members speak to this. I do want to make sure it's clear, as it is in the cover note here, that AFSCME did ratify as of Thursday of this past week, they have ratified this contract, which I think is very good news. So now it's for you as a board to discuss this, and our recommendation is that you would ratify.
Mhm. Great, yeah, the agreement that was ratified by ASME is actually attached here. We discussed the points of the agreement in the executive session with the rest of the board. I think that the two main points in this agreement are around premium cost share, health premium cost share, and salary increases. And we settled on a 13.5% premium cost share for 3 years of the contract. Salary increases were 1.9% for the first year and 2% for the additional the second and third year. The rest of the points here for the public, they'd like to are in the attached agreement. I don't know, Gina, Melissa, anything to add here?
Well, I just think that it should be noted that, ASME provides every level of support in the district. And really our teachers couldn't do the wonderful work they do, and our administrators, without the support of ASME. So, they're very vital to our district. And, they made some financial concessions, when we wanted to outsource the work on the fields a couple years ago. We agreed to, give them another union position for groundskeeping. And then, the world went crazy, and we explained to them, sorry, we can't follow through on, on that side of it. And they understood, and they worked with us. And I think that it's important that, again, as we're going to be in budget season in a few months, and people are looking at salaries being like 80% of our budget and screaming like, how can you pay people so much? I mean, the members of our unions are working collaboratively with us. And I think that it's important that the public know that. And, we're working together to make this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think ASME was very sympathetic to the financial challenges that we're facing in town as well. So with that, can I have a motion?
Move that the Western Board of Education ratify the tentative agreement between the Board of Education and ASME Local 1303-110 of Council 4 for a collective bargaining agreement effective July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2023.
Have a second?
Second, Melissa.
All in favor?
Ruby. Hi, Taffy.
I'm Melissa.
Hi, Victor.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Hillary.
Hi, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Still, one of these meetings, we're gonna have to put you first on the agenda.
Now, I like to be on the back end of everything because I like it this way. It's all right.
We want to get to you when we're fresh, you know?
Yeah, no, I kind of like it this way. But as you guys know, we go through this intense process, this intense discussion in our FinCom meetings, and so this is really just an overview for the full board. I think we do cover a lot of grounds in FinCom. So, and you guys definitely get me very fresh in those meetings. So I'm assuming that I'm up.
Yes.
Okay. So before we get into the full into the numbers, I just want to highlight a few changes that we've made in the hope that will add greater clarity to our finances and to our overall operations, and just for overall comparison. So what we've done for this year is that we have added, for comparison purposes, a 3-year look back. When you look in the financial statements, you will see that we're currently showing fiscal years 18 through 20, just for comparison purposes. What we've also done that we definitely hope will definitely add greater clarity is that we have expanded on our two line items. So historically, we're presented certified and non-certified salaries as just one single line item. What we have done for this year is that we have just expanded that out and pretty much just highlighted all the categories, so to speak, or all the object codes that make up the salary, the certified salary number, and also with the non-certified salary numbers that were presented. So this way, for comparison purposes, our full operation is fully, we try to be as transparent as we can, and just to, and more importantly, just for clarity's sake. So with that said, there's not a lot of updates. This is our first main update for the fiscal year. Technically, even though the fiscal year started July 1, for all intents and purposes, activity really ramps up once the teachers and the students are back in building and back on campus. So for this month, what we're trying to do for this month is really just to highlight those unanticipated reopen costs that we have and all the various mitigated revenue sources that we have to mitigate some of these unanticipated expenditures. I know we've spoken about this in several occasions as to what those are. Just a quick overview as to what those line items are. We spoke about the addition of 2 teachers, both at grade 1 and grade 3. And that's coming in at a roughly $143,870. We have also anticipated a shortfall in our food service revenues, and that's primarily associated with not serving as many meals as we've been accustomed to, as you guys know, because we're currently on this hybrid format that we're on with 50% of the students on campus. Also, we have the health insurance and Medicaid and the benefits associated with that new hire. A big ad that we will have for this year is the enhanced cleaning that's surrounding COVID-19. As Gina mentioned, we definitely work with the union and the union worked very collaborative with us to allow us to do this, where we're not hiring additional full-time personnel district-wide employees. We're working with our current provider, Affinico, to provide us with, right now, we have technically 3. We have 2 full-time and 2 half-time staff who are primary responsibilities is really a hyper focus on this enhanced cleaning. Once we wrap up, we'll definitely reevaluate that and see if there's a need for to add more time to that staff. So we're projecting that full cost to be at roughly $208,000. In addition to that, we will also be cleaning the buses between runs. We do anticipate that cost to be roughly $19,000. So overall, in terms of cleaning of both our facilities and for our transportation fleet, we're looking at about $227,000. We had a slight budget and error in our equipment rental line of approximately $16,000. Another big ticket item that I just want to draw everyone's attention to right now is the purchases that we've made for health and safety. The year-to-date expenditure that we've made so far, we're looking at roughly $123,000. We're fully stocked up for the most part. As we mentioned, this is new to us, and we're trying to establish a base point to determine when we would need to replenish our stock. I know Bill has been in what I like to call now our stock room to see all the supplies that we have. We have an adequate supplies of disinfectant wipes, hand sanitizers, masks, and all the various PPEs, gowns, and so for the various staff members who may need that. In addition to that, we do have face shields as well, including that 123 or the desk shields that we did purchase for the various staff members, and for any staff member who may have a one-on-one interaction both with students and also with anyone from the public, which we do not have currently, but mainly anyone who has a direct one-to-one interaction with the student. Another big ticket item that we have that I just want to put out there is the teacher toolkit. The board has approved approximately $123,000 for that toolkit. We've had some additional costs relating overall to technology. A big one has to do with a trade sanction that between the United States and China, which kind of put us in a added lead time to our Chromebook purchase. So because of that and because of the time constraint that we had, and we needed to have the Chromebooks in place for the start of school, we had to come up with approximately $15,000 above budget to cover those costs. In addition to that, we had quite a few Chromebooks that did not have any covers, and we also needed to provide covers for those Chromebooks. All in, right now, we're looking at an additional cost of $152,000. Another big ticket item that we have and that we're looking into right now are the additional Chromebooks. Not Chromebooks, but additional laptops that we have that we will need to provide for subs. The current model that we have, and I think last year we did have a discussion about a refresh of all of our equipment for our teachers. Where right now we do not have any spares in district. And we do have an agent inventory, so to speak, of laptops and other devices that we have. So we do not have any spares. So if a unit should break, we would need to replace that. And we do not have a budgeted line item for that. So as we need to replace those items, that will definitely be an over budget line that we will need to cover. Did have a discussion with Dan DeVito, and because of the need for that, we definitely did agree that I think currently we are purchasing, I may get this wrong, but I think we're looking at purchasing 9 or 10 additional laptops right now.
8.
Thank you, Dan, for just to have available if there's a need for a substitute. So those are the big ticket items within the technology. The other items that we have related to the shortfalls that we do anticipate relating to revenues that's coming from facility rental, reducing parking fees, and an anticipated shortfall in theater receipts. In terms of mitigating funds that we have available, I just want to point out that the Board of Finance did approve the carryover or the non-lapsing account, I do believe at their September 10 Board of Finance meeting. The understanding with that non-lapsing account is that those funds, $177,568, will be used primarily for directly related to COVID-19 expenditures. We did have a discussion with them about broadening that scope to cover more of our unanticipated reopening expenditures. At the time of that discussion, the Board of Finance did only wanted to restrict those funds directed to COVID-19. Another item that we have this ESSERS fund, the $51,000 that was approved later last end of the fiscal year. We have a FEMA reimbursement. I think a few months ago we spoke about that we did submit to FEMA, and we did anticipate at that time a reimbursement from FEMA of $70,000. FEMA has since then changed their methodology, so to speak, as to what funds or what expenditures they will reimburse. A lot of those items that we had to do with PPE, and FEMA is at this time not reimbursing any PPE unless it's directly related to first responders. So right now, and I'm becoming less optimistic about this number, the number that we have right now as a whole is $44,321 that we will get from FEMA. For open choice, for this point, I'm more than likely certain about this number, $80,000. And the State Coronavirus Relief Fund, initial estimate of $350,000. Just a quick addition to that, the number that is slated for Western for that current number is roughly $446,000 and $446,605. A huge chunk of that, approximately $134,000, has to do with what the CSDC, the OPM is concerned to be personnel funds for personnel related to transportation. And these are only funds, these are funds that can only be used for transportation personnel, for bus drivers, and for any bus managers that we have. I did not include that, any offset for that, because we currently do not have any expenditures directly related to a bus monitor or any transportation personnel as defined by the CSDE and the OPM. We will have further discussion. Right now, the grant application for the CRF was open today. We have until October 2nd to finalize our grant application. Initial indication that we have is that the state is going to be doing a survey to see where we are currently and to see if they will allow working with the OPM to make any budget adjustments. I do want to point out that when we do resubmit what our estimated cost may be, that it is possible that we may see a reduction into the funds that we will receive from the state. The number that they currently have for transportation it's significantly higher, I believe, than what the number that we submitted. And I do think that the 134 number that we're seeing right now is pretty much going to go to zero. So that pretty much is in a nutshell. That was a lot said just now in terms of where we are as of August. Also want to point out that beginning in September, which is typical for what we'll do, we'll start to encumber our full salary and our benefits. We normally wait until about September for the hiring process to be completed, and then to also do a thorough review of where we are in terms of our salaries and where they stand to budget. So I do anticipate that at our September meeting that I will be given an update in terms of salaries and benefits, and to see what the trend is. One other thing related to salary and benefits in terms of our encumbrances, as you will recall, the state froze our increase, pretty much the premium increase, until October 1. It's still going to be the annual as amount, but we'll not see an increase, so to speak, in the premiums until October 1st. At that time, we will chew up our encumbrances as it relates to health insurance. So there's a lot of information right there. I'm just going to pause, see if anyone has any questions.
So Phil, I've been thinking a lot about this transportation grant, and I'm on the committee, so this is the second time. We've already spoken about it in the committee meeting. And I'm wondering, has the application come out yet? Like, do we actually know what the language says within the application? And is there, you want to capitalize on whatever grants could possibly be out there to, to help mitigate and offset, the additional expenses that we have. Is there an opportunity to get from the bus company a portion of their contract that they use maybe towards the cleaning of the buses or something COVID related, that then we could essentially reduce our contract by that amount with the bus company and then take advantage of the grant funds to make up the difference? Does that make sense?
In a way it does, but in terms of the bus company, so we've definitely had conversations with our representative there, Vinny, just to let you guys know, there's a few things going on with transportation, which I'm in contact with Vinny, hoping that we don't have to pay that. So I don't want to get a lot into that right now, because I don't want to put Vinny on the spot unexpectedly. But so the short answer to that for right now, I want to say no, but because there's other costs that's not factored in. For example, our current contract calls for our runs, our home to school run, which we will do one run in the morning at a certain time, and then we'll do the second run in the afternoon at a certain time. Because we currently we do have an early dismissal, the time between the first drop off and the early pickup or dismissal at the high school is not factored into our budget. And there is potentially an additional cost for that. So we're definitely in negotiation with the bus company to find ways to mitigate that, which could work out to be a larger number than the cost for cleaning. So that's from that point of view. In terms of the grant and the restriction related to the grant, the guidance that we did receive from Katie Dempsey, who is the CFO at the state, is that we should submit a grant application pretty much to align with the survey and to not make any deviations from that, and to wait for this survey that should come out early October, early to mid-October, to then at that time make any requested budget transfers, if that's clear. So right now we're pretty much stuck. We have to submit a grant application based on what that survey was in early August, and then wait for that final survey to come back out in October. Now the caveat as well that I want to put out there regarding the CRF funds. The CRF funds are only going to cover expenditures for the period March through December. It is not going to cover for the full year. And I think this has to do something with it. Yeah, that's what we found out. So it's not going to cover expenditures for the full fiscal 21 year. It's only going to cover March through December. Yes, Gina.
Did they give an I love when Hartford does things. Did they give an explanation as to why they were picking that particular date tranche straddling 2 fiscal years instead?
Right. I think this does tie back to the overall CARES Act and to the direct period when they can spend it. So I think for this particular fund, our money that they did have available, I think this is directly related to guidance that they did get from the federal government.
And then I guess this goes back to the curriculum conversation we had about if we were going to really possibly consider having a scenario that would include 3 bus runs. If that was on the table, does that then mean transportation funds out of this could be used to fund that 3rd bus run?
All right, so we have to be very careful with that. And so our approach and everything that we have done is that we have taken a very conservative approach to what we have purchased. That's just our nature, just to be conservative. If you take the formula that they've used to determine what portion of the transportation funds will be allocated to every school, the formula is they're taking your enrollment, they're dividing your enrollment by the total enrollment of all the districts who did apply, let's say for transportation money, and then that proportional money is multiplied by how much money was available for transportation. And the money that was available for transportation was $20 million. So for districts who are of a larger size, they'll get more, but there's not a lot of money that's available, so to speak, for transportation. And as I mentioned earlier, I do believe that we may see a reduction in our transportation allocation. So again, it's a little bit. It's very, very fluid right now, and I have to really take a second look as to where we ultimately will be in terms of what money we're going to get from Hartford and the fixed time period that we have. Because one thought that I had, so one of the reasons why I had the discussion with the Board of Finance is in terms of having that definition for the non-lapsing account to be broader, is because I wanted to maximize the funds that we could use from the state before tapping into our non-lapsing account. And because the PPE, the state did fund for every dollar that you submitted for the survey, they did commit to fund that at 100%. So I wanted to use all of our money, because we haven't spent a lot of money, so to speak, because we're very conservative in our approach to that, and we truly wanted to get what would be truly effective for health and from a health and safety perspective. We didn't have substantial expenditures related to health and safety. Everything that we need, we do have in hand, but it didn't come at a substantial cost. So I wanted to maximize that. take a step back. So the additional cleaning costs, my idea based on what the initial guidance that I saw was that the cleaning costs related to the third party would be covered by the state. The state is saying that any cost related to cleaning, whether it be an in-house or a third party, should be used from their personnel line. To give you guys a sense as to what the personnel line is for Weston, that is $6,000. So the allocation and how it's set up, right. So it's going to mean, and again, it's still a little bit fluid, and I do not have all the information right now. So this is all the information that we have as of right now. And as the month progresses and we do things kind of settle down a little bit, I'll be in a better position to inform the board as to exact FinCom and the full board as to where we are, and truly what our projected deficit will be, taking everything fully into consideration. As we go back to FEMA, and because of this window that we have with the CRF funds, because the money we did submit to FEMA for FY20 expenditures, assuming that we'll get that money back, those expenditures made in FY20, we will use that. We will seek a reimbursement from the CSDE using the CRF funds as a part of our overall health and safety PPE expenditure. So we will definitely be seeking that. And again, to show you how things work, both at the federal level and at the state level, on September 17th, we were informed that Weston and many and all the districts in Connecticut will be receiving face masks which will be provided by FEMA. So this is on September 17 that we were notified that we will be getting a supply of cloth masks from FEMA. And this just goes in line with everything else that the state has done, and the timing of everything that the state has done, and that most districts, including Weston, that they've made expenditures only to find out at a later date that, hey, by the way, we're going to give you Chromebooks, or by the way, we're going to be giving you cloth mats or something else. So that's just the situation that we're currently living in, and we're just doing the best that we can do. But again,
and you can't request that be a reimbursement instead of.
We cannot. So again, I think the takeaway from all this is that for Weston's sake, and just the way that we do operate from a very conservative stance. We take a very conservative stance in just pretty much how we spend our resources, and we spend our resources in a way that will give us the best bang for the buck. And I think that's what we have done to start the school year. And that's pretty much set us up in the way that we are, and we're focused on PPEs that will be the most effective, not just to have a PPE, but truly PPEs that will really be the most effective.
And then Phil, I just want to ask a couple of questions just to get things in the public record for people who may not have participated in FinCom.
Sure.
One, for our PPE purchasing, we partnered with Westport to take advantage of getting quantity discounts. So we've done our due diligence about making sure to get the best prices on things.
That is correct. So for the vast majority of our PPEs, primarily as it relates to personal PPEs, as it relates to gowns, face masks, and the like, we've definitely worked with a company, Jeff Love and Associates, partnering with Westport to get the best pricing that we can get for other PPEs, protective equipment or safety equipment. We were not able to partner with Westport, but because of our pricing discounts that we do receive from WB Mason, we were able to get discounts for items such as our hand sanitizer, not hand sanitizers, yes, and also disinfectant wipes. And do want to put on the public record that is a national in terms of disinfectant wipes. Currently, all the major brands, the Clorox and such, they're not available to the general public. They're really specifically given to healthcare facilities. And even if they were available to the general public, we could not get them in the quantity that we wanted. So we went with the best things, the best wipes that we could, which is definitely effective. So we went with an alcohol-based wipe at a 70% alcohol level.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I hope the other board members really dug into the new schedule that you put together with breaking out the trends. And just want to stress to our fellow board members that FinCom and Phil are evolving together on how we deliver information. And so just be forewarned, things could look different next month, but we're trying to work to a clear, transparent way to present the information to all of you and to the public. And thank you, Phil, because it's moving in the right direction, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so if there's no other questions on the general financial statements, I just want to talk real quick on the Internal Services Fund. All right, shifting to the Internal Services Fund for the year-to-date ending August 31st, our claims experiences and admin fees are currently at $57,733. On a year-over-year basis, we're definitely seeing a significant reduction, and we do want to attribute this to the current social distancing that's in place nationwide. We're continuing to monitor on that, and we will see where we end up. Just as a reminder, we have budgeted for this year that all dental expenditure or dental claims will be paid 100% from the Internal Services Fund. So the budget for that amount was approximately $396,000, which would leave us with a budget balance in Internal Services Fund, or balance in Internal Services Fund off in the mid 700s, just so that we are just to refresh everyone's memory, as we not only for now, but as we start the budget process with all these different things and all the pluses that we may have for our operating budget. All right, if there are no other questions, I do believe this is the end of the financial. Yes, Ruby.
So one thing, and I know that we've been talking about it a lot internally. I just don't know if we've actually announced it publicly yet. And Dan, I don't want to steal your thunder, but do you want to talk about the laptops that we're getting?
Sure.
Sure. So we had put out, the state had put out the Everybody Succeeds initiative, and we had requested 600 Chromebooks. They had originally come back and said we were getting 37 of them. Then I got an email about 2 weeks ago that they are funding the remaining balance of them. So we're going to be getting all 600 new HP Chromebooks. They said delivery is going to start statewide in October. Fingers crossed that that's like the 1st of October for us to get them, because we could really use them specifically at the middle school, because they have the oldest Chromebooks in the district and students are really struggling with Zoom meetings with them. And we're also going to be using them for our paraprofessionals because they are really needed. The paras right now also have some of the oldest Chromebooks in the district. So this is going to really help us basically from grade 2 to grade 8. Our oldest Chromebook in service will be about 3 years old, with still a good 2 more years of life left in those Chromebooks. So fingers crossed we get them soon, because we could really use them. Oh, and I will also say with that, we also received 67 internet filtered hotspots for families in need who do not have internet access at home. So we received the hotspots already. I'm just waiting for a login to a webpage called Sentinel, which will allow us to then provide them to students.
That's great news.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if there's no questions, no other questions for Phil, can we have a motion?
Move that the Western Board of Education approve the second FY21 financial update and approval of transfers. Although we're not doing transfers, so I'm going to amend that motion. Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the second FY21 financial update.
Second,
Second, Ruby.
thanks, Ruby. All in favor?
Aye, Taffy.
Hi, Melissa.
Aye, Ruby.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Victor.
Hi, Hillary.
Hi, Tony. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Phil. Thanks for the update. So now we have a bunch of policy items that we have to go through. Bill, how do you want to go through them?
Yeah, I can start into it and frame it. I know Melissa is chair of the policy committee, is ready to do some backup here. Also substantively, a couple of them are ones that Dan DeVito is guiding us on already. And then two of them are ones that Tracy Edwards is already guiding us on. So these are first read, so there's not anything here for you to vote on. When we get into the superintendent's report, I'll talk about one policy we'd hoped to have here, and Ken will back up on that one, which is the homework policy, but I'll deal with that under the superintendent's report as to where that is. But I might at this point, Melissa, if you think, just go one by one as way of update, and we can see what we want to have Dan add in on, DeVito, and then Tracy speak to. Does that make sense?
I was on mute. I can run through them all just in a row. I think that makes the most sense. We can ask questions at the end if anyone has them. So the first two are related to technology and computer systems. The first being student use of district computer systems, and the second being the use of private technology by students. These are policies that are not unique to COVID, although they are incredibly helpful to have these policies now with all of the remote learning that we're doing. But just to be clear, the policies will stand regardless of whether we're in remote learning or next year not being in remote learning. It just basically gives the district the opportunity to monitor the computer systems and prohibit certain types of uses, limit things to legitimate educational purposes. And in the case of student use of the district computers, enact internet safety measures and require the students to have a use agreement in place. Regarding private technology that students are using, meaning they're bringing their own device and using their own home purchase devices that are not purchased by the district, we are still able to, prohibit the use in, certain circumstances so that it's limited to school purposes. And if during a school usage, there is a prohibited use, and the policy delineates all of these prohibited uses. I'm sure you can imagine what they are. Cyber issues, pornography, all that kind of stuff. We do have the right to discipline, and we still have the right to monitor while private devices are being used on the school network. That's kind of the gist of those two. Anyone have any questions about technology? Okay, great. The next two, Dan, did I miss some?
Dan, did you want to add anything to this?
Nope, you hit all the major points.
Great. It's a great policy, by the way, Dan. I know you worked really hard on these, and they make a lot of sense, and I think it'll help with all of the distance learning that we're doing. Absolutely. Next are the sexual discrimination and sexual harassment policies. These were drafted by our outside counsel. They're basically statewide changes to Connecticut sexual harassment law, particularly with respect to Title IX, which is obviously what is in play in public education. And it's the first time that sexual harassment has been addressed in the Title IX context. So it's important to have policies in place that accurately reflect the existing law on sexual discrimination and sexual harassment. And that's what these policies do. There's one for personnel and there's one for students. Um, that's basically it. Any questions?
Tracy Edwards is our designated Title IX officer. So I don't know, Tracy, if you want to add anything to this. And she deserves credit for making sure we caught up with this critical issue.
No, thank you, Tracy. That's a very good point. These are, not to underscore enough that these are changes to not just in the educational context, but in the business world as well in Connecticut, and they're quite substantial requirements for training and monitoring and education for small businesses and for public education. So while the policy may be easy to understand and pretty clear, the obligations that Tracy and her department have to do are unfortunately substantial and not coming at a particularly great time. But luckily the state did extend the training requirements from October into the start of the new year. So we do have some time, but Tracy's already ahead of the game on that and has in place a lot of the modules and what needs to happen. So we are in good shape. But Tracy, if there's anything I didn't cover, feel free.
I think that was a thorough summary. I think you have the full packet of both the policy and the regulation now, which we didn't have in the policy committee meeting. And the regulation is, about 20 pages, which gives you a sense of the complexity that we're talking about. But I have nothing else to add.
I do want to underscore that even upon arriving and knowing Title IX sits within her bailiwick, Tracy beat a path to my door via Zoom to say, we need to get this figured out, please. And I said, I agree. So I appreciate your work, Tracy, in getting to the policy committee and navigating things with Shipman Goodwin to take advantage of what they already had put together on this. So.
Great, thank you. Move to the super's report, Bill?
Yeah, I at this late hour, I think we've covered almost everything we have to. There is one item that Ken and I will tag team on. The policy for homework has been in process. I apologize that it didn't get up into the agenda as listed here, but we realized that when the window had closed. So I just want to have Ken flag for you where that is as an FYI, also to put you at ease as to whether or not, and we'll get it into, if it's possible in a special meeting, we'll get it so you can vote on it in the double read cycle. But he'll assure you that nothing's waiting on this. We're able to still make sure homework's handled the way you would hope. So Ken, why don't you go ahead on the homework policy issue?
The homework policy, the draft of the policy and regulations has gone through policy committee, has gone through curriculum committee. It's certainly ready for the board's final review with a first read and then following up with a second read. We want to get that policy established after all the hard work that's gone into it. Whether it gets adopted in October or November really won't make much of a difference, because we, in terms of making any of those shifts, we're going to have to spend some time when things settle down with staff. I mean, in this scenario that we're in, the policy is really established for when we're in a more normal environment. But obviously, I think what the student responsibilities, parent and teacher responsibilities do carry over to what we're doing now, and I think are very, very helpful. That's one thing we pointed out in the last curriculum committee meeting. So getting that policy to you and adopted will be helpful in that respect, because then, we will review that with staff when things settle down and we have the time. So Bill, no later than, the October meeting would be the first read. Hopefully, maybe there's an opportunity sooner.
Correct.
Anything else, Bill?
No, we covered a lot of ground tonight, very productive, very helpful. So I think that I just wanted to bring into the superintendent's report just that policy issue regarding homework.
Great. Anything from the committee chairs?
Only just to ask, I was looking on CABE and only just to ask why the curriculum committee minutes do not appear on CABE for this past meeting. Or do they appear next meeting?
Well, we have to approve those minutes.
Okay,
So-
they haven't been approved, of course. Okay.
Yes.
But we also didn't have the last minutes, I guess the May minutes.
Those May minutes.
Those are the ones that were being revised.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
You got For revision, June is sent those out recently.
Yeah.
And then at your next meeting, you just adopt that.
Okay, so just for public record, we are on it and all of the minutes from curriculum will be posted for the next meeting.
For FinCom, it is with great pleasure that I announce we have our first budget workshop on Friday. We will be doing a review of process from last year. And just as I indicated in the financial report section of tonight's meeting, there will be some proposed revisions to how the budget is presented to us for the coming year. So Phil needs to hear from us what worked, what didn't work. We're going to hear from Phil what he thinks he needs to present to us. And we're going to be working towards getting ready to rock and roll with budget season.
Can't wait.
And then just FYI for parents who are struggling with calendar issues and understanding when their child goes and what's special, whether it's a blue 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, I still have to reference calendars. So Dan is actually looking into a way that we can sync up with our phone and that it is actually highlighted with your actual school's calendar and not just the district calendar, but the school's calendar that actually highlights whether it's a blue 1, 2, or 3 day, just for ease for parents going forward.
Great. Okay. Maybe before we adjourn, we can talk about the final topic, which is the upcoming board meeting on October 19th. So we had a discussion, we started a discussion at last meeting about potentially having this meeting in hybrid form or, you know, in public with all of the appropriate caveats in terms of social distancing and so forth. And then the question came up, well, you know, is that going to be an extra burden on the district in terms of cleaning before and after? Also, there was a technology issue, whether the technology currently in the middle school was such that it could be effectively broadcast out to the community with, you know, the audio, you know, with all of the, you know, audio aspects being the quality such that everyone can really hear and follow the discussion. So maybe Dan, you can talk a little bit about the technology issues and the challenges and what we need to do. And I'm not sure, Phil, if we have an update on what needs to be done in terms of the physical plant. But maybe Dan, you talk a little bit about technology.
Sure. So the major challenge in looking at the space is to have microphones that are strong enough to pick up voices through a mask, and also to have cameras that could pick up a socially distanced board meeting. So looking at the space and planning how the layout would be, obviously everything is much more spread out. Right now, we currently have 3 cameras that are basically hung on the rafters that would not be able to catch everybody in the meeting. And the microphones are not powerful enough to pick up audio through a mask. I know there's always been, well, there's been audio issues at live board meetings in the past. So we are looking at basically overhauling the entire microphone and camera system so everything can be done socially distanced without creating massive tripping hazards from wires strung all over the place. So I already met with a vendor. We've discussed what are the options, and I'm just awaiting a quote. But it would be a major overhaul for the system in order for us to have a properly socially distanced board meeting that is not a disservice to the public, so that they could actually hear what everyone's saying and see what everyone is saying at the same time. So I should have a quote probably within a week or two for what that overhaul would cost.
Okay. Phil, in terms of just
Right.
the cleaning and everything that needs to be done with having a physical board meeting?
Right, so I'm not quite sure if you guys are aware. So normally when there is a board of ed meeting, we normally staff that with our custodians from the building. So in terms of the additional costs, it's not, we may need to have someone in that space maybe for an hour at max 2. So this will be a service that will be provided by our in-house custodian using the equipment and the supplies that we do have. Of course, with the extra emphasis on cleaning up our high-touch surfaces. We do have our wonderful mister that we did use for over the past 2 days for the 2 incidents that we had, and we were informed that they worked very well, and they did cut down on the overall cleaning time that's needed. So in this particular instance, the additional cost would just be the time that it would take for our in-house custodians to do that additional cleaning.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Dan, question, once you get the quote, what would be sort of a normal time frame if you did decide to overhaul the whole sound and video system there?
Most likely the equipment would first have to be ordered. The vendor most likely does not actually have the equipment in stock. So there would be a lead time from when they receive the purchase order to when they receive the equipment to installation of everything. And I, from talking to the vendors, it's going to be work. It's not like it's a 1 or 2 hour deal, because they've got to get into the ceiling. They've got to run everything in the rafters, make sure the wiring is hidden, bring it in all the way to the studio, which is in the back of the media center. So I'll have a more accurate answer for you when I get the quote. I can speak to the vendor about like how quick a turnaround time if we choose to go this route.
Yeah. So it sounds like until and unless we get more information on that and decide what we want to do with that cost, it's probably, given this environment, it's probably not the first thing we want to spend money on. I suspect that we're just going to be in this mode, at least for the next meeting, unless anyone thinks otherwise.
No, I mean, have we gotten any complaints about the Zoom technology from the public or problems with any aspect of it? I haven't heard anything.
They're just very few. There've been a few comments that parallel what's happening in other districts, which is if you have your students back in, why aren't you back in? I've tracked how this has worked with other boards. I think, Tony, you may have tracked. Unless the technology works well, I mean, our need to make meetings to be heard and seen well are actually working better in this than they would in what Dan has described. A lot of districts are trying to get back to the board in person. Some have tried, it hasn't worked very well, so they've gone back to some form of a hybrid. I think what's most important, as I would look at it, is that you can be seen and heard clearly. And I'm not confident without a significant investment, and Dan DeVito will run the numbers for you, that we have the technology to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, to be clear, anybody making a public comment or any PTO representative that would want to attend in person wouldn't be able to anyway under the social distancing guidelines that apply to the district. So you're really just talking about us and the leadership team being together versus being on a computer.
And quite frankly, I've seen a couple of area district board meetings, and with some some in person, some on Zoom, some wearing masks, some their masks slipping down, under their nose, and others complaining about it. It hasn't really gone, it's a little awkward. It is a little awkward.
Yeah.
So we stay in this mode for another month, and we continue to evaluate. And but I haven't received any emails, suggesting that we need to be physically present at the middle school. All right.
Tony, this would be the time I just quickly review for the October meeting. Meredith and I are updating the chart, which we're not done with. And actually, Ken and I need to talk about this, because typically in October, you'd receive what we call the Gauging Student Progress Report. That's entirely based on assessments, many of which were not given last year. So Ken and I will talk about what might be in its place if nothing else. We also should add to the agenda, obviously, and it sounds like we'll have meetings ahead of then, but discussions about our schooling approach, where we are, in terms of hybrid, et cetera. So we should add that in. But typically in October, you have before you the budget assumptions to discuss, the budget calendar to discuss, which would flow out of your workshops. And October is a critical date for that. You get your enrollment report from Malone and McBroom in November typically. The state data is required to be submitted as of October 1. I think it'd be a little tight to ask Malone and McBroom to have the report to you only a couple weeks later. So I'd suggest we stay with November as their enrollment report date. So for next month, the only thing in question from what you typically get would be this Gauging Student Progress Report. And I can talk with Ken, we can email you as a board as to what we'd suggest in its place. And to repeat, we would add in an agenda item regarding our schooling scenario and where we are on that.
Yep.
I'm assuming the Gauge and Student Progress Report, though, we would still get the statistics about the class of 20. I mean, they basically had a full year. We did have APs. We did have all the college applicant, all that went forward. So
yeah,
I'm assuming we have that.
We've broken it into two reports. There, if you're asking about sort of the college statistical report, Gina.
Well, there's just one where we talk about how all of our AP classes did, how, the standardized testing that people chose to do, acceptances, all of that.
Yeah, well, Ken, you can speak to that. We did break that into 2 months. November, you get the what would be the class of 2020 statistical report.
Okay.
But
yeah, we plan on delivering the statistical report as we've done in the past in November. The Gauging Student Progress, those smarter balance assessments did not happen.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Sorry, brain's tired.
Yeah, and the one thing that we really haven't done, and I think that it's just a bandwidth issue with everyone, is the district goals, which, that's something that, Bill, you and I have to talk about. What we do on that front.
So Tony, then so that's the next monthly board meeting. How does everyone feel about the next time then we reconvene to discuss?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is probably regroup with Bill and see when the principals will be ready, and then have Meredith sent out a doodle on that. I would do it as soon as it's practical. Anything else? Well, this was a short one tonight. Just gets us just trained for budget season.
I thought that virtual meetings would be shorter. I really did, and I'm wrong.
No, it's great sitting in your home and
Eating your dinner.
could go on all night if you like.
Well, as you guys can tell, we're still on campus.
Oh,
Yeah.
get home.
Oh,
to dinner.
okay. All right. On that note, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Meeting adjourned.
Aye, thank you.